Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Canadian Premier League Newsroom full season preview show. I am Kristian Jack, alongside, as usual, my coach, Charlie O'Connor-Clark. Charlie, happy Wednesday. It is almost Christmas Eve for us, I suppose. Eve of the new season as the Canadian Premier League is back. And we're going to be with you for the next hour or two just to preview this show. It should be a preview of the season on this show. It should be a fun one.
Yeah, that didn't take long, did it? The off season, especially considering how long the last two off seasons were, waiting for the season to start. It's really, really nice that it feels normal. Things are starting to get back to the way that we all want them to be. Teams in their own cities playing in front of their fans from the beginning. A normal season across months, not 3 months.
Yeah.
I can't wait. I can't wait to just get going and to finally have more CPL soccer to talk about.
Yeah, same. It's been a long off season a little bit, but not that far, as you mentioned, since December, but lots to get through. Since we last saw a CPL ball kicked in anger, the men's team have reached the World Cup, so it's been an amazing time for Canadian soccer as it is. Since we last saw a CPL ball kicked in anger in the league, the two-time champs, not the reigning champs, but the two-time champs, Forge, went into Mexico City and played with an elite team at the level of Cruz Azul and did a great job in it. They're now back to try and get their title back off Pacific as well. And we're back with you. We're back with you for a full season preview tonight. We're going to go through all the teams, give you everything you need to know. You can join us. You can come on in, as I said on Twitter this week. If you're a diehard CPL fan, you're going to love this show, Player Profiles. We've got guests from all 8 teams. We're going to hear from some of the coaches as well. If you're new to this league as well and you're just picking it up, come on in. We're going to be here for you. We're going to tell you everything about it as well. And as a casual fan, there's a lot for you on this journey as well. It is the 4th season of the Canadian Premier League, and there's 8 teams in it right now. It's a fantastic season for growth. And as Charlie alluded to, last season, if you missed it, was a condensed year coming out of the pandemic into a bubble in Winnipeg, in Winnipeg, where they squeezed 8 games inside the best part of a month. And then we basically played a full season inside, another 2 or 3 months after that. And then did our season in December, where Forge hosted the final against Pacific. And Alessandro Hajabrapor's 59th minute header was enough for Pacific to lift their first ever North Star Shield. And if you missed it, the winner, the hero himself, Alessandro Hajabrapor, swapped the jersey of Pacific to the orange of Forge. Terran Campbell went with him, the star striker from Pacific. These are just 2 of many storylines, Charlie, we're going to get to over the next couple of hours. But it doesn't get much more juicy than that when the player who wins the final for one team leaves the team that they beat in the final.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the biggest stories of the offseason, especially because, these 2 teams, rivals from the final, are playing each other on opening weekend on Vancouver Island. It doesn't get a lot more fun to open a season than that, right? So I know that there's going to be a bit of an edge to that game because you never want to see players that have been so important to your team go across the hall to the guys that you don't like so much. So I think there will be there will be a little bit of an edge to that game. I hope so too.
Some edge. I hope there's some edge. That's what we want. You need that a little bit of rivalry in sports as well.
Yeah.
I did an event last week for Forge, a great event for their launch of the jersey. I know out on Vancouver Island they did one as well for Pacific, and there's been a lot of those jersey launches. Check it out, by the way, at CanPL.ca. Tons of fantastic new shirts, and Macro does a great job of those coming out. And during that launch, there's a lot of people in Hamilton just delighted to see their players and their heroes. And even Alessandro Hajabrapor got a big round of applause. But when they were talking about Pacific, there's this big boo around the crowd. And Alessandro just put his head down a little bit, like a little boy in church. He didn't really want to be recognized at that moment. So keep me comments coming in. Great to see so many of you in the chat. Hello to Jefferson, to Finn, to Brock, Christopher, Duncan. We're here for you for the next couple of hours or so. We start... with a lot of changes a lot of changes in the league, a few changes in terms of the rules and the roster things. Charlie, we put that out about an hour and a half ago. Important for people to understand. This is a Canadian league for Canadian players, where young players, and we're going to do a lot of that all the way in the next 2 hours talking about these players, and a lot of them are Canadian, are given pathways, and the league and the resources are there to help them. The league resources, including the amount of Canadian minutes you got to play for under 21 minutes, and that goes up to 2,000 this year. That was announced officially about a couple of hours ago, Charlie, amongst many other rules that the CPL decided to share with the viewers and the fans all across the league this year. And I think that's the most important one is, again, the backing of young players and giving them an opportunity to succeed. and also play in a professional environment where they know they're going to get chances to continue to fail and succeed again.
Absolutely. And I think that's the best thing about having young players and making teams play them in this environment. It's not a reserve league or anything like that. These are players coming into professional environments, playing in a lot of cases with and against players who have been at higher professional levels of the game, have so much experience from around the world that they can pass on to them. And that's just a really good way to kind of get your foot in the door and get your start as a young player to eventually move up and onward to other levels of the game. And we've seen players already in just the first 3 years of the CPL get that start here, move on up. I mean, we've seen Caden Chung and Lucas McNaughton at TFC this year. They've looked great. And there's plenty of other players that have gone around the world because of where they started in the CPL. And it's so important to our game in this country right now. It's something that we didn't have 10 years ago, 5 years ago, even. And it's only going to continue to increase and strengthen the player pool across this country, which, you know, helps everybody from the senior national team to the youth teams to the grassroots level of the game.
Yeah, great points. We've had the leading goal scorer of all time, Easton Ongaro, depart Edmonton and go to Romania, where he's playing competitive minutes there in their search for European football. We've had a young star like Antoine Couplan leave Ottawa, and Atletico Ottawa getting some compensation back for that as he goes to play in Croatia. Charlie mentioned it, Lucas McNaughton and Caden Chung playing significant minutes for Toronto FC. Just many stories of success from last year for players who've moved on. And we should not also mention Mo Babuli, who had a terrific year for Forge, is now over in Qatar as well. Comment in the chat from Chris: was Charlie the one who predicted that Pacific would finish 7th this season?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. I don't know who predicted. I think I saw that going around the range somewhere on social media. That would not be Charlie. Who I believe somewhere in that room there is a Pacific jersey hanging up somewhere. Might be one maybe belonging to Alejandro Diaz, maybe from last year at some point. But no,
that's in the closet there.
That's in the closet. There you go. I knew it was there somewhere. Let's get into this. As I said, we're going to go team by team. We're going to get you to know it. The people who love the teams, obviously, you're going to love it as well. Come on, jump in if you've not seen the league before. Pick yourself a team. We're going to go coast to coast, and we start with Halifax. And by the way, if you've never been there, what a place this is, the Wanderers grounds. Arguably the best place to watch a Canadian Premier League team. And arguably last year, the best place to watch the best player in the league. We start with the player of the year, Gian Morelli, who's 14 goals, got the Golden Boot and Player of the Year award last season. Before we hear from Stephen Hart and Gian Morelli, this is an interesting team that kicks off the season as early as tomorrow night. That's right. We'll be at York Lions Stadium for York United's debut of Martin Nash against Halifax. These teams met 5 times last year, by the way, and some really unbelievable games. I don't think Halifax won any of them. York, I think, won 1, and there was 4 draws, including probably the game of the year, Charlie, that happened at the Wanderers grounds, the 3-3 in the absolute torrential downpour on a holiday Monday, which was amazing. But what are your thoughts about this Halifax team? 15 returnees, a lot of stability, and then some key players coming in, familiar names, particularly to TFC Academy, like Mohamed Omar, Aiden Daniels. They're a team that Stephen Hart believes can compete for the playoffs, and it's hard to not really understand why. You can see why they like the players they've got.
Yeah, they're a team that did come really close to the playoffs last year. I think they missed out by 1 point on that 4th place spot because they didn't get the win on the last day of the year. And I think it was the right call to mostly go with the structure that was already in place with that team, because a lot of it is still a core of players that were even there in 2020 when they had a really good run at the Island Games over obviously a very short season, I think 11 games, but they went to the final. They played some good football. Last year was really tough for them in the attacking sense. They had the Golden Boot winner, obviously, but nobody else on the team had more than 3 goals in the league. And they scored the fewest goals in the league with 28.
Yeah,
which is obviously a frustrating thing if you're a coach like Stephen Hart. And I know that's something that I think he said even this morning on his pre-match press conference, was that he as a coach can direct players to get into areas. He can help them get to the penalty area, but he can't score goals for them. He can't finish into the net. And that's really what it was for Halifax, right? I don't think I've ever seen a team underperform its expected goals more than they did last year, with just the times that they would get into the box and beat defenders and get into good areas, but then the finish just wasn't there, right? I mean, a player that comes to mind, Akeem Garcia, was nominated for Player of the Year after the Island Games, had a really tough season last year. I think he only ended up scoring 1, maybe 2 goals for that team.
2 goals in 21 appearances.
Yeah, after being such a key player for that team in both of the prior 2 seasons.
Yeah.
This is going to be a big year for him. Hopefully he's coming in fitter than last year and just probably quite motivated to contribute a lot more on the score sheet. They still have largely the same attacking group as they had last year, which is interesting. The big additions were in midfield with Daniels and Mo Omar, and that will help them a lot in terms of moving the ball quicker and getting into those areas. But really, they do need the Akeem Garcias, the Corey Bents, and so Sam Salters and so on to put the ball in the net. Because even Joao Morelli will tell you himself, he wants to arrive in the box later. He wants to create more because he's naturally a number 10.
Yes.
So that's, I think, the key focus for this team this year.
Yeah, you mentioned it. Last year, so many struggles to score. In the end, Morelli was just like placed everywhere. Occasionally he played as an 8, then he played as a 10, wide a little bit and drifted in, and then occasionally played almost as this false 9 player, just because, Stephen Hart was just trying to throw anybody who could get into that number 9 spot. They do have a pretty solid back line when you think of like Charla's one of the best defenders in the league. Rampersad, one of the best defensive midfield holders in the league as well. So that, that spine down the middle, I think, can certainly help them as well. But you alluded to it. Lack of goals has been a massive problem. 19 out of 28 games last year, they scored 1 goal or less. You're not going to win many games with that kind of stat. That's a big problem for them. But yeah, Christopher says Omar looked good from the little he saw at Notre Dame. Obviously talking there clearly about Mohamed Omar, the captain, and Colorado Rapids first round pick as well. There's a lot of content. We have a lot of content all around these teams at CanPL.ca. In fact, every day we've been releasing over the last week or so team of the day, and Halifax is actually today, so it's actually worked out perfectly for you guys as well. As we start with that, you can catch a very extended interview with Gian Morelli. We're going to get to that later in the show as well, here very shortly as well. Lots of features, drawing challenge with Corey Bent, which was really fun as well, and he's a great personality. Anytime I can give my mate a shout out from Preston, us Preston lads have got to stick together, so I'll give him a shout out for that. And also my 20 and 10 with Stephen Hart, as we try to get enough questions in over 10 minutes. When we talked about him. And I want to show you a clip. I asked Stephen Hart this week, particularly about the rise of Canadian soccer. Stephen Hart, of course, was the national team manager and did a great job there. People remember in the end, unfortunately, how it ended with 8-1 Honduras, but was very, very good as well in terms of, nurturing a lot of these players who continue to be there. And here's my clip with Stephen Hart as he talks about what has been successful for the Canadian men's national team and now that it's helping everywhere else across Canadian soccer.
I think it's just fantastic for football in general. The players are looking at it with a lot of anticipation. None of them were born when we played in the last World Cup. It's just an exciting time period for those of us who have been exhausted waiting. It's great.
I love his enthusiasm. One of the nicest men in the game, no doubt about it. And it's delighted to see him back. I know he had a couple of health scares last year as well. And I actually said in the interview, you can go watch it, but how are you very different now? And he laughed it off because he just said he's very, very different. He also has Alex Dorado now, who comes in with a great resume that has allowed him to take a little bit of a backward step, but Stephen Hart's still the man in charge there. The man in charge on the pitch is pretty much Gian Morelli. Now, if you know Gian Morelli, he's a great personality. He's the kind of person that you want to build your team around. In fact, we like to build a league around because he's a content dream. Gian Morelli has a fantastic story. For those who don't know, Morelli played at Middlesbrough. He played a lot in the northwest of England. He's got outstanding English language qualities, even though he's from Brazil. His own story himself, where he almost died when he was a 10-year-old boy after an accident, and obviously what happened to his skull. You can go check that out as well. Lots of interviews on that, particularly with me last year on Beyond the Pitch as well. And there's lots of things that Gian Morelli can talk to you about. He's an inspirational figure, Charlie. And before we hear from him, I know you had a chance to sit down with him, so I'd like to hear your thoughts about what you had to chat with him on.
Yeah, Joao's just a great guy, and as he said, a great character to have in the league because he's so much fun to watch. His goal celebrations are great as well. The thing that strikes me most about Joao is how happy he is in Halifax, and that feels like a bit of something that maybe wasn't totally expected, something that he might not have expected coming from Brazil. He played before that in Estonia, I think, and he was in England at Middlesbrough and Fleetwood Town and a few other clubs, but he seems to have kind of rekindled his love for the game in Halifax. He's a lot happier there. He's become much closer friends with the rest of his team. He said that it was a bit of a struggle for him, to be honest, making friends and making connections in Europe with the clubs he was at. And he feels like he's matured a lot since that. So the Gian Morelli that we have now in Halifax is a really important player to that team and to that locker room, because not only is he fantastic on the pitch, but he's seen the game all over the world. And he's a good ambassador for, I think, Canada and for the Canadian game when he goes home to Brazil or when he speaks to anybody else from around the world. He only has good things to say about the city and the league, and especially the fan base in Halifax. He said, because last year he played his first game at the Wanderers grounds, he said it blew him away. It was in the rain. I think it wasn't even full capacity yet, but he walked out on that pitch and he was just flabbergasted at the atmosphere at Wanderers grounds. I think he went on and scored 2 goals in that game against Atletico Ottawa. So it's just really nice to see him enjoying his football.
Gian Morelli certainly loves to play football in Canada. Here he is with Charlie O'Connor-Clark.
Let's look back quickly on just last season. A very good one for you personally, not necessarily the one that the club wanted, I think, after going to the final in PEI and then just missing out on the playoffs last year. What was that season like kind of as a group for you guys, and maybe what do you think you guys maybe learned from that as a team?
I mean, it was really close. I think all we needed was to win the last game. But I mean, we learned a lot. We had difficulties during the season, and I think this is going to be the main thing for us this season, is not conceding goals like in the last 10 minutes of the games, which we did like a lot of times. We were like leading the game and then just tying at the end made us like lose a lot of points. And it's just basic stuff which we've been like working on this too. I mean, obviously for me, I was happy with my performances and I got the awards and everything, but as I said before, I would like change that for the team to win the league. So the main thing this year is to adjust the things that we need to and hopefully get to the top 4 and from there we'll see what happens.
Halifax. This is going to be your 3rd year with the club. Your 2nd actually being able to play in Halifax. But you've spent a lot of time all over the world in your career, right? You played at home in Brazil and in England and Estonia.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about what it's been like coming to Halifax and why you're happy here, why you like staying here.
When I was 18, all I wanted was to play in Europe, and I went to a big club. But my expectations were too high. Nothing related to football. I thought my life would be perfect, and it's not like that. Obviously, everywhere you go, you have problems, difficult hard times, like with people. Mm-hmm. Then I was like a stubborn kid when I was 18, and I was just here. I found like honestly like my teammates. I can literally like call them brothers. So this is something that makes me feel like happy, because off the pitch is if you're good off the pitch, then on the pitch like it's more than 50% that you're gonna be at your best.
When you go home, like to Brazil, I know that you were home in Brazil recently over the winter. What do you tell people about what it's like to be in Halifax and to live in Canada?
I just tell good stuff, man. I love Halifax. I'm having like the best time of my life, so all good stuff, man. I don't think there's like a bad thing that I can say.
What are you most looking forward to about just getting back out on the pitch and having another season to go for it and to go for that top 4 spot?
Yeah, I'm excited again to play here. Hopefully this year we can get things right and make less mistakes. And for sure, if we make less mistakes, we're gonna be on the top 4. There's a lot of pressure on me to do again what I did, which is really hard. But I'm training the hardest I can. I'm taking care of myself like as much as I can to do it again. And yeah, man, I'm excited. We have a lot to prove. It's funny, we're always the underdogs for the league, but it's okay. But we're gonna prove a lot of people wrong, for sure, this year.
Do you maybe embrace that idea of being maybe the player that other guys and other teams are like, that's the guy we need to focus on?
This year, everyone starts from zero, so I'm not anymore. let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens. I guess that's the motivation factor, no? You win MVP, Player of the Year, you win Golden Boot, and then that's what happens. You just don't want to go out there and start again, and that's what it is. I think Charlie's frozen right now as well, and so no, he's back. Charlie, are you here?
Great timing. I love when that happens.
You had a little smile on your face there, buddy. It was fine. It was absolutely fine. But yeah, your overall impressions from Morelli, having spent a good chunk of your day with him.
Yeah, it was great. He loves to speak highly of Halifax and of the club, and especially of his teammates. I know that became quite close, especially during the pandemic, with meetings on Zoom, and a lot of the players, once they did get to Halifax, were living together and so on. So they became very close over that time, and that's a bond that's clearly stayed because a lot of those players are still there at the club. So I'm very excited to see how that continues to progress this year, because they do have something solid in place in Halifax.
One final thing on Morelli, and I talked to Stephen Hart about it this morning, is that yes, he was Player of the Year last year. Yes, he was Golden Boot of the Year, winner of the year. Last year, he got 14 goals. Gian Morelli only played in 58% of Halifax season last year. He missed a chunk of time, significant time down, particularly down the last few months of the season. When Gian Morelli was on the pitch last year, Halifax outscored opponents 21-19. When he was not on the pitch, they got outscored 15-7. That's how valuable he was. That's how big he was. And if Gian Morelli's playing a lot of minutes this year for them, look out, Halifax Wanderers, a real contender for the top four. We move across Canada and to our next team now, and we go to the nation's capital, where there's been more changes in the offseason for a team that is obviously well funded by Atletico Madrid. It is called Atletico Ottawa. If you're new to the team, they became obviously the 8th franchise in the Canadian Premier League, and they have a new boss. Last year, as much as we loved our time, particularly Charlie loved his Zoom chats with the ever lovable Mister, who was a wonderful man who learned English and was very charming and had a great smile on his face. It probably, Charlie, was time to find somebody else, particularly after the difficulties last year of giving away far too many easy goals. They have searched the world and they found their man, and he is Carlos Gonzalez, former Atletico Madrid youth coach who worked in Kuwait with the under-23s and the senior national team as well. A search that I know they took very diligent amount of time, but they circled in on Carlos very early in the offseason and eventually secured his signature in February, and he's been working very hard with the team in Madrid during preseason. And by now, you look at their roster and you think, again, there's a lot of turnover, similar to the way last year you think about a lot of players that have gone. Viti Martinez, Tevin Shaw, we mentioned Kuplan, the Spanish players who were on loan last year, the likes of Nunez and Soto and Uche. Ferdinand's loans ended, Dylan Powley, Higgins, we go on and on. There's at least 14 players there that have turned over. But Charlie, on the other side, I'm throwing to you, some players that have come in, and I think, I don't know what you think, I think they're considerably stronger, and they're a lot deeper this year.
I agree. I think Ottawa is probably my pick as the most improved team in the league this year, because there are kind of two categories of players that they've recruited this year. There's this very strong group of players from other CPL teams that have come in: Nathan Ingham, Ollie Bassett, Kevin Alleman, Maxime Tissot. So they brought in these players that understand the league and understand the level and have done well at this level in the past year or two. And I think that's really important to have, that kind of connection, that understanding. And then there's also some fascinating international players that have come into this side that I can't wait to see. I think there's two in particular that we're probably going to have to talk about. The first being Vladimir Maurigrega, who comes in on loan from Atletico San Luis, so another part of that Atletico Madrid family. He was one of the top scorers in the second flight in Mexico last year for Atlante. He's a young player, but he seems like he's got tons of attacking talent. I know that the Mexican club is very high on him. He's played against some of the best Mexican teams in Liga MX in the cup there. So that's certainly a player to watch. And then the other one, obviously, is Abdou Sissoko, who is, I don't know how a player of that kind of experience and quality comes here, but it's incredible. He got an unbelievable resume. He's played in La Liga, he's played in Ligue 1, he's played in Serie A, he's played in the Turkish league. This is a guy with unbelievable amount of experience. I think he's 32. at the moment. So he's going to come in, bring this veteran presence, stand in midfield, and just have that kind of quality, maybe a little bit, a similar kind of veteran experience to, we remember Francisco Acuna, that Ottawa had at the Island Games. I personally was disappointed that he ended up leaving the club because he was a fabulous player. Suzuka's a different kind of player, but he's got probably even more experience around the world in some of the highest levels of the game. So I think that he's going to be a player that's very entertaining to watch and just so important to the kind of tactical identity of this club, because he's worked with Carlos Gonzalez before, we should add, in Kuwait.
He has. Yeah, that's the connection, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
It's amazing that Atletico pull, though. Let's be honest. You come play for
so.
the Atletico family, and there's lots of connections that you can get there. No doubt about it. Before we move forward, let's look back, and I want to do that briefly with Carlos Gonzalez, because Carlos Gonzalez did come new, and he's actually only been in Ottawa about 7 to 10 days. By the way, as I alluded to, they have had a very, very intense preseason. They've been in Madrid for close to a month, double sessions, competitive games. We did remember this last year with Atletico Madrid, who had a very intense preseason, and we all thought they'd come out at the kickoff in Winnipeg a little bit stronger. It didn't work out. But Carlos Gonzalez, I spoke to him this week for 20 and 10. You can check that out on our website as well. But one key thing I want to show you today is, what did he think when he scouted now his own team, when he watched them back in 2021?
Well, it's true that I've seen quite a lot of matches, but the reality is that I think that I don't like to evaluate the work of last year, but what I've seen is that maybe the team should have been a little bit more competitive in some moments, because in some moments they were winning matches that at the end they draw or they lose, so they lose quite easy points because of small details. So I think we're working on these details, on being solid, on being a compact team and a very competitive team. So this is the idea that we have been, one of the ideas that we have been focused on the preseason.
Small details, including not giving away penalties. That might help, because last season they actually conceded a league high, get ready for it, 12 in 28 games. That's right, 12 penalties. Many of us at OneSoccer, many of us at the Canadian Premier League, when we've been working on these games, often found ourselves putting our hands up last season going, again? Adam Jenkins had some historic calls about how many penalties he gave away, I'm sure. 11 of them also were converted. That also didn't go well against them either. They did, though, end the season quite well, and they went to a back three during that time as well. We're going to get to Balou Tabla, by the way. We have not forgotten about him, Brandon. Don't worry about that. But they did end the season with only 1 loss and 6, a 3-game unbeaten run, and that is their longest unbeaten run in the history of their small franchise, 3-game unbeaten run. So there's some positives there, and obviously some players that have returned back from last season. 7 returnees in total, the likes of Manella, McKendry, Verhoeven, Wright, Becky, Acosta, and of course the leading goal scorer, Malcolm Shaw. However, we have to also talk about the man himself, Balou Tabla, who I know we've also got an interview coming up with as well at CanPL newsroom. And Balou Tabla is the kind of player, and much as you talked about Maurigrega as well, is the kind of player that can light up this league, Charlie. If those people aren't aware of his resume, Barcelona B, obviously scored big goals last season in the Canadian Championship at the Wanderers grounds, CF Montreal player, Canadian Championship winner. And I think he's got a good head on his shoulders. When we've heard interviews with him, he seems like a player that is understanding now that this is his big moment, and that it's not all over yet, that he can come back to the Canadian Premier League and build that journey back up to MLS, which is obviously something that he can still think he can do at this level. I would agree, if he's got chances, I would definitely back him to do that, Charlie. Yourself?
Yeah, I think so. Balou's going to be an interesting player this year, because I think he has come back to the CPL and he's gotten a little more grounded. I think he had a bit of a reality check in the past few years, because just his trajectory was so quick and he had all of this hype around him. I mean, I think even from a national team perspective, there was a point when it was like him and Alphonso Davies were kind of the young players of the future. It didn't work out quite as well for him in that sense. He didn't quite manage to crack it in Spain. but he did very well still in Montreal, in MLS and everything there. And we all know that he's an unbelievably talented player. He's got that ability to stretch the pitch. He's got that creative ability. He can, beat probably almost anybody on the dribble. So I think that as long as he's coming to the CPL with, a good head on his shoulders, as you said, the right attitude, which it seems that he is, then he absolutely has the potential to be one of the best players in the league. And I think that's probably part of the idea. That's probably what he wants to be in coming back to this league. He wants to remind himself why there is that hype around him, why he's so good, because he can dominate. And he wants to get that confidence back and that form back, because obviously he wants that kind of career rejuvenation, which players sometimes have found in the CPL.
I also think it was a really astute move by Fernando Lopez and Atletico Ottawa to give him a long runway, 3-year deal, right? You don't have to come back right now, buddy, improve in 3 months. You're going to go out there. Let's just build this up right now. And you got a long career ahead of you, but just come back, take your time coming in. And then within 18 months to 2 years, maybe there's a chance for a sale there. But Duncan says Atleti felt like they were two clique Spanish boys and Canucks needed to bring them together. But maybe we'll see. I still think there's a genuine team there. You can see certainly, the Spanish, a lot of them have changed over. But don't sleep on Miguel Acosta, by the way, who could talk about Spanish, one of the best defenders in all of Canadian Premier League last season, almost led the league, I believe, in minutes and blocks as well, and tackles. So fantastic, versatile fullback. Another player that Atletico Ottawa has brought in for real stability is a player from York United, and that is Nate Ingham. Last year, remember, Dylan Powley was in goal for Atletico Ottawa. They believe that they've significantly upgraded. They've also brought in Sean Melvin, who's got a great resume as well, can certainly battle Nate in net as well. But recently, we got a chance to sit down with the former York United shortstop.
What was it like on the other side playing against Ottawa in the past?
It was always fun coming here. It was the stadium, the situation, kind of the atmosphere that Ottawa has was always something that we were envious of. As a whole, just being able to drive in downtown, it's something that not a lot of teams in the league have. It has the ability to create something fantastic. So as an outsider, it was, jealousy, envy, those are the words. It was why I'm here. So
that's the primary reason why you're here?
No. The club itself, what Atletico brings to the world stage and Canada soccer in general was a no-brainer. So immediately when we found out ownership was coming into Ottawa, the first thing I wanted to do was learn more about it. Why are they buying a team in Canada? Are they putting all their resources into it? And the more I heard, the more I was interested in it. The city itself is beautiful. Again, the supporter section. There's nothing I didn't like. I went out on a limb actually when I signed here, because I spoke a ton with Fernando, and obviously there wasn't a coaching staff in place, and I knew that there's going to be a massive turnover. He told me the players that aren't returning, who he planned on keeping, and a lot of turnover. So it was kind of a leap of faith, but I had all the trust in Fernando and the club itself. After the first month, I couldn't be more happy.
So what was preseason like?
Preseason was a lot. I mean, it's kind of what you expect. I know a lot of people were a bit jealous that we're going to Spain and we get to do those things, but you constantly have to remind them. It doesn't matter where you are in preseason, it's not a ton of fun. We were treated very well, we were taken care of, but at the end of the day it was a lot of work. But the level was high. We have depth at every position. We have a lot of guys that are excited, and you want to be someone who's won a domestic title and a cup and go to a Champions League. Like, those are those goals you have when you're playing professional football, and all of us have kind of brought those goals here together, and I think this is the year to do it.
Towards that, what are your impressions of the new Gaffer?
He's great. He's man of few words, professional at the highest degree. The other really good thing that I don't think a lot of people realize is him coming from a national team environment and bringing guys from all over the place and trying to get them to mend and get together and mesh within a week before their first game or a few days before their first game. He's kind of the perfect guy for the job, because he's now brought in guys from everywhere, and we've had 5 weeks to get us kind of on the same page, speaking the same language, and he's done a very good job of that, I think, and his experience with national teams probably was a lot of help for this project.
You sound very ready. You sound ready to take it this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's my job to be, right? And at goalkeeping, you can't afford, you just got to let the world come to you. You can't go out and chase the game. You just have to deal with situation by situation, and you have to be ready for everything, whether it's, an easy pass or an easy save, or, one in the top bin. So it's, you don't get a choice. You just show up and you got to be ready for everything.
What do you think about the CPL going into season 4?
Yeah, it's grown immensely. Thank you to the men's national team for what they've done, and Herdman for the job he's done over the last however many years. I honestly, even the people inside, I don't think they realize how big what just happened was, and I'm so thankful to be a part of it in a very small capacity, and I'm hopefully going to be able to reap the benefits, and the generations to come are really going to be able to reap the benefits of what's going on now. I think people are going to be very excited about this year, and it's just going to get the ball rolling for years to come. Every year is a new challenge, and I was naive when I was younger, thinking like, okay, well, once you get there and you're a starter and you've been in the league for a few years, then the next contract's coming and you're a starter forever. It's like, oh, you've already proved it. It's done, and it couldn't be further from the case. Like, every year is a new challenge, whether it's winning a spot, securing a spot, fighting for a spot. It's just another challenge. Now, I have the confidence to come in and be the number one? Like, of course, I have to. That's my job. And you would think anyone at this level is coming in thinking the same thing. I've had to take kind of the long way my whole life. I grew up in a small town. I played club level. I wasn't provincial team. It was never the TFC Academy or the Vancouver Academy. It was always, a little bit of the long way, and thank God for it, because I've just been so much better for it. And when it comes to work ethic, when it comes to not backing down and showing up when I need to, that's what I pride myself most on. So any team I come into, it doesn't matter if it's this level or the next level. That's got to be the mindset. That's how you get a winning team.
Great job, producer Jeff and Kenny behind the scenes, for a fantastic interview, and thanks to Nate Ingham as well, because what a great personality. It's inspiring. We should not lose sight of a Canadian telling a story like that, getting to play professional football, and just saying there, my job now, my inspiration is to go play Champions League football. This is where we're at, Charlie. This is what the Canadian Premier League is giving. This is what Forge, we're going to get to Forge in a minute, of allow people to dream of. Let's get to the Champions League and play at the highest level in this region. And in Nate Ingham, Ottawa have got a good one here, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And they've got a great goalkeeper as well in Nate. He's a good character. He's always been, a big part of the York locker rooms that he's been in. So I think he will bring a little bit of leadership to that Atletico Ottawa group, a little bit of shot stopping, which, hopefully they won't need as much as they did last year, but they'll certainly need.
Yeah.
And yeah, as you mentioned, it is cool to see the CPL players starting to realize, the heights that they can achieve with their club. Right, everybody saw Forge go play at the Azteca. They saw them winning in Honduras, El Salvador. I don't want to talk too much about Forge until we get to them, but every other team wants that now.
No,
so that's definitely something that's nice to see.
Absolutely. And while I finish on Ottawa, a reminder: they kick off on Saturday in the nation's capital against Cavalry, and it is a pay what you want day. Pay whatever you want. Go watch the team. All proceeds to go to Ukraine and the mission services that are going on down there as well. A wonderful cause, as usual. This organization at the forefront of that. So if you're in Ottawa or around that region, pay what you want. Go watch two great teams kicking off a fantastic season. We are 2 teams in, 6 more to go, and York is next.
Everyone has a different relationship with the game. Whether you play with your team or do your own thing. If you're an all-star or a beginner. If you watch from the pub, from the stadium, or even from your phone. We all cheer in our own way. But no matter how you cheer together with the Center Circle. Sign up for exclusive access to content, rewards, games, ticketing, and more. Join today at CanPL.ca/membership.
From one Ontario team with a new coach to another. We go from red to green, a little bit like Christmas here with these colors.
It feels like it.
It does feel like Christmas for all of us. We move over to the Greater Toronto area and, of course, to York. And Martin Nash is the new man in charge at York, following Jim Brennan's guidance to York United in the playoffs last season. We'll start with that. I think we've got a lot of storylines with this team. No doubt about it. The team at the forefront of playing young Canadians, flourishing. Isaiah Johnston, Max Ferrari, Cedric Toussaint, many others getting chances. York made the playoffs last year. They won 8 out of 28 games in the regular season, drew 12, lost 8. Made it all the way to the semifinals before losing to Forge 3-1 in the rain and cold. And yes, it is still rainy and cold in Hamilton. This is where we're at. This is the long winter we're in. At Tim Hortons Field back in November. They did make it to the Final Four, but they've changed the gaffer, and Martin Nash is in charge. And he seems like a perfect man at the perfect time for this team, Charlie. A guy who's ready for his opportunity, a guy who's ready to play with young players. He's got a fantastic resume himself, of course, with a wonderful career making it to the national team, and somebody that says he's learned a lot under Tommy Wheeldon Jr. as an assistant in Cavalry.
Yeah, he definitely has. And he's learned a lot from a lot of his time at the game. I think he's been an assistant coach at other levels, Ottawa, I think, for a bit. And I think he was a national team assistant for a little bit as well. And it does feel like the perfect time for him as well to step into a head coaching role. I think he maybe had outgrown the assistant's role in Cavalry, and he did seem like one of the more obvious choices for the next CPL assistant to step into a head coaching job. And it's going to be interesting. I think he's a very different coach, a very different character to Jim Brennan. And that's something that every York player that we've spoken to has echoed. They're going to be a different team this year with a slightly different tactical identity, maybe a little bit more of an organized approach, more methodical build-up play he wants to see, because last year's York team were pretty high octane. They played quite direct a lot of the time with that kind of counter-attacking, and that's not entirely going to go away. You know, you can't stop Max Ferrari from being a direct player, I think, but it's going to be maybe a little bit more of a measured approach to ensure that there's more left in the tank for this team at the end of the season, which certainly was a bit of an issue towards the end of last year. So I think that this is going to be a very fun team to watch. There's lots of just fascinating young players on this team. You know, the other one that you didn't mention is Lowell Wright, who's going to the Canadian under-20 camp next week after tomorrow night's game. There's a lot to like about this York team. They're on quite an upward trajectory. Last year was a pretty big step forward for them, and I think that there's certainly the capability of taking another one. I think there's more depth in the squad this year as well. You know, it seems like almost every position there's some competition for that starting role. So they're definitely going to be one of the teams to watch this year.
Yeah, I love this team. I got to say, you talk about strength and depth, that, you know, they're going to be tested this season and given chances. You know, some of the international overseas players, I think, are going to need a little bit of time. And some of the young Canadian players are going to need a little bit of a breather. Like, you think last season, the schedule was so congested, yet Max Ferrari played every game apart from the last game when he didn't need to play. You know, Isaiah Johnston played 25 games last season, right? Cedric Toussaint played 24 games last season. Lowell Wright played 26 games. You know, they just played so much. A lot of the reasons why, because some of the other players, you know, Faria, Harley, Laverne, Rivero, they didn't, you know, Ramirez, they weren't necessarily relied upon to give those minutes. Now you look at some of the players that they brought in, you know, and they're proper players. I think they're players that can play significant minutes. Yes. As you said, a lot of overseas players they brought in. You know, Mamadou Kane's coming from the CF Montreal Academy. He'll certainly help cover that areas as well when Wright's gone. William Wallace, who's got Fluminense on his resume, and I've seen him play already. A very, very attacking, direct player with his left foot, can cut in off the wing. And what a great name it is. Spoken like a true, you know, Scotsman, William Wallace from Brazil. You know, I love Mateo Hernandez. He's my favorite signing. A very creative midfielder, an outstanding resume. Who's played at a very high level in South America. And by the way, brings a bit of bite. You know, if you're playing against him, you're not going to like him. And I love that if he's playing for my team. But you mentioned it. They have made some changes. And Martin Nash is a very astute manager. As I said, I spoke to all these coaches recently. I spoke to him again today in his press conference, which went very well for him. He's excited about their debut. His debut behind the bench tomorrow night, by the way. You can go out to watch it at York Lions Stadium as York United start the season off against Halifax Wanderers. 7:30 p.m. live also on OneSoccer. But yeah, here is a clip from Martin Nash as I asked him what some of the areas he wanted to improve on from 2021.
Personally, I think the team was very transitional last year, and I'd like him to be a little bit less transitional because in that case you get a bit too exposed at times, and they did a good job of dealing with it. But I think it'd be nicer if the team wasn't so exposed at times, and a little bit less transitional.
Very quick, very honest. And by the way, he's probably been used to those answers because when he got the job, I'm sure he had to answer some of those questions as well. I want to say this quickly. This is a Canadian league for Canadians. And that's not just players. Coaches like Martin Nash, and by the way, we're going to get into Cavalry later. Nick Ledgerwood is now stepping into that role, and I'm sure he'll be a coach. It's also a Canadian league for Canadians to use their coaching stripes and get the opportunities like this. Martin Nash more than deserves it, but that's the chance now for a Canadian to come behind the bench and get his opportunity here as well, and to work with young Canadians. And that's when I said earlier about Ferrari and Johnston and many others, they're going to be inspired by Nash because he's been there and done it, much like they were with Jim Brennan last season, Charlie.
Absolutely. And it's not just working with young players in an academy level or something like that. It's working with young players in a professional league and getting them accustomed to what that means day in, day out to be a professional footballer, because that's at the end of the day what all of these players want to be. Yeah. Whether it's here, whether it's abroad, up a level, MLS, wherever. That's what they need to learn at this age so that they can do that. And Martin Nash has that experience as a player, as a coach. And again, it is these opportunities for Canadian coaches to come into the league and to, continue to have that kind of impact on the game. There are so many Canadian coaches that have similarly found that opportunity in the league that wasn't there before. There's now 8 professional head coaching jobs that didn't exist 4 years ago. So that can't be understated either, because Canada hasn't actually produced a ton of top level coaches over the years, partly because there just haven't been anywhere for these coaches to go
opportunity,
at a good level.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah. So it's the exact same thing as it is with the players. So, and York is really, really embracing that at the moment.
They're an exciting team to watch, an exciting team to get behind. We talked last year about squeezing everything they possibly could out of that thin squad and a young squad. It probably caught up with them, to be honest. They trailed in every game of their last 9 matches, and in the end also would get a little bit too far to battle with Forge in the semi-final. But Martin Nash told us and the media today the priority is absolutely to get in the playoffs, and then almost a new season starts from there. One of the most exciting young players in this team, and a player that a lot of people are watching, not just in CPL, by the way, across North America, is Max Ferrari, a player where you can play him on the right, on the left, in midfield. And even since Martin Nash said today, if you ever asked him, you can play him centre-back. Not that he will be, but he's that kind of player who trains hard and just does everything that he wants. Here he is, Max Ferrari, who recently sat down with our Charlie.
What's the kind of attitude around the team at the moment, knowing that you're playing a game in just a week?
I think a lot of it's building on from last year. Obviously, we got into the playoffs, proved a lot of people wrong all year, especially with the young group of guys we have, and especially the vets helping us throughout the way. And we kept a lot of good pieces. Obviously added a lot of new faces, a lot of good new faces, coaching staff, and then some new players. And this year it's the same type of vibe. It feels like a family at York, and it's enjoyable. I mean, yeah, it's exciting. And going into April 7th, we're excited, and this year we want to do better than last year.
That's got to be exciting, right? To be part of this group that's kind of building something that's sort of what the CPL is all about, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially me being a hometown kid. I'm from Newmarket, Ontario, so I'm playing for my York region team, my home team, and yeah, just knowing the project that everyone has behind this, Angus and Nash, it's exciting. I want to pick up from what we did last season. I feel like we did good, but there was a lot we can build off of, because for me, thinking about that playoffs, like, there's a weird feeling in my brain thinking about that, because I feel like there was a lot to play left at Tim Hortons Field. There, at 1-1, I feel like we all wanted to do more and be in that final.
Again, yourself last year, you played a few different roles this team, left, right. I think you played a couple of games at fullback.
Yeah.
What was it kind of like for you to try yourself in a few different roles, and just where are you most comfortable personally? How do you see yourself as a player?
For me, yeah, I always grew up I wasn't very fast. I was pretty small, and I was usually in that midfield position, central midfield position. But as I got older, a bit quicker, I've now played on the wing. But last year, I want to say I played, I think it was 10 or 11 games at fullback. Mm-hmm. For me, I like that. I like the fullback role. I'm starting to learn a lot about it. Even the wingback role, I like it.
I don't think anybody would have called you slow last year. But You mentioned coach there. There's a new coach this year with Martin Nash coming in to take over. What's he like as a coach? How is he maybe different from Jimmy Brennan last year? And what has this preseason been like with him kind of coming in and establishing himself?
From day one, Martin's been great to me. Right when we found out that he was coaching, we got into contact, and just a great guy with the same ambitions as a lot of us. We want to win here, and he knows what I can bring in as a player, and as me being who I am, I like to ask a lot of questions, and he's there for me every time I need something.
What kind of expectations do you have for yourself this year? Like, what do you want to see from yourself?
Yeah, obviously I think I had a good season last year. Personally, I want to clean up a lot of things, especially I think everyone will say this, they want to improve their stats, but for me, I think I want to improve my goals and assists, but even defensively, as we were saying, it was as a fullback or stuff, I want to clean that side. I'm still learning a lot because it's only been a year for me playing there, and just learning every day. And
I think this season should be a little bit, different, maybe better, just because it's more spread out.
Yeah.
I think a lot of guys around the league, including on your team, would admit that you sort of ran out of gas a little bit towards the end of last season, right? And especially as young players, you push really hard for a little bit, and then you're kind of out of steam by the end. I'm sure that's kind of something that you guys could feel last year.
Yeah, I think I want to say it was 33 games in 4 or 5 months, so it was a lot, especially for me. I played every game. And towards the end, you could feel it. Obviously, that's no excuse for the form we had at the end, whatever. But I think this year will be a bit better. It looks like the schedule will be more spread out, more time for us to rest.
We've seen players, especially at other teams around the league, impress in the CPL and then move up, right? In the world, we saw the 2 guys from Pacific getting signed by TFC this offseason. Does that drive you to sort of continue to compete and to play well in the CPL?
Yeah, since I was a kid, my biggest thing is proving everyone wrong, and seeing these guys make it to the MLS and doing well in the MLS and even other levels, it gives me that little push to I want to be, because for me, I want to be at the highest level. I know a lot of people want to play at the highest level, and seeing how good these guys are doing, those 2 guys at TFC this year, it makes me have that, I don't want to say hope, but that feeling that I can push myself to that next level.
You guys have to play a game next week. Got to play a few more after that in this season. Yeah. What are you looking forward to most about getting back on the pitch, and especially that first game at home?
I'm excited to play in front of our fans at York Lions Stadium is the main thing, for friends and family. I'm just excited with this group. I think we're all excited, and we want to win games here. Build on from what we did last year, and it's just exciting to play football again. It's good to be back.
Great to have him back. Max Ferrari still only 21. And talking about numbers in the 20s, last season we did something called CPL 50, where many prominent media members got to vote on their best players, and Max Ferrari came in at number 20. He was a dynamic player last year, no doubt about it. And as Jeff alludes to in the chat, York easily is one of the dark horses. He also mentioned there, great questions and great answers, by the way. They played 28 league games stretched over 6 months this year. That's right. Yeah. April 7th to October 9th. That is significant for them. And overall, I think this team's an exciting one. We should also mention the future looks extremely bright for them. The news this winter of coming out about the Woodbine complex as well, where they could actually get a move as a new stadium coming out there. That's fantastic for soccer in that region. We've spent many, many hours with many passionate fans at York Lions Stadium around this team, previously known as York 9, now, of course, with that magnificent crest, York United. And this just feels like a team that's on the rise on and off the pitch under a proper coach, a really good management group, and some outstanding young players. A lot to like about this group, Charlie.
Yes, there absolutely is. And you mentioned the stadium complex thing. Angus McNabb spoke a little bit about that the whole news recently from Woodbine Entertainment about that. That's something that the club has been working with them really hard on for actually quite a long time. So they're very happy to be able to finally start sharing that. Yeah, and that's again very exciting for that club to really build something in a community that they're looking at. But on the pitch, this is going to be one of the most fun teams in the league to watch. It's all of these young Canadian players that really are the reason for this league to exist, and they're complemented by some players from international, from around the world that have played the game at incredible levels. They're going to bring just such entertainment value. I don't know if we've mentioned Sebastian Gutierrez yet, but
no,
he is a phenomenally talented, creative player who I think is going to catch a lot of eyes this year, and the club believes so as well. But there's so many names on this list. And as we alluded to, the season stretched out over 6 months will mean that we'll have a much higher quality of football. Players will be fitter and healthier. You'll be able to see teams use their depth and rotate and just really achieve the best versions of themselves. So that's maybe the thing I'm most excited for this year.
Yeah, lots of good signings coming in. Martin Greitside, they obviously from the Czech Republic with a brilliant resume as well. Once obviously looked at by Arsenal and from Victoria Plzen. And I like Jesus as well, the left back. There's a lot of good players here, so keep an eye on that. From York, we travel down the 401, down the 427 and QEW, and all the way to Hamilton. And we go to Forge. That's right, the two-time champions who were knocked off their perch by Pacific on one cold day in December last year, as Pacific took the crown from them. But they are the two-time champions for a reason. They are also a team, the only Canadian Premier League team, who has played already here in a competitive game in 2022. It's been a bit of an interesting preseason for them because they've had two. That's right. They came back a lot earlier than everybody else to prepare for that glorious two-legged tie against Cruz Azul. Boy, oh boy, was that spectacular. They kept them close in the first leg and then were very competitive, scoring a goal in the famous Estadio Azteca in Mexico, and then obviously competed very well in the last 16, the CONCACAF Champions League, which is just a phenomenal achievement for a club of that. And trust me, Mexican teams, all across Central America, scouts, asking many of us in Canada, how is this team and how is this league doing it? So congratulations to Forge. And they are not the champs, but they come back with a little 2 on the sleeve now, a little new addition to the crowd for the two-time champions. And if they're not the champs, you could still make a case, Charlie, that they are still the favorites. A very deep team with some big-time additions, taking 2 players from the champs, and of course, a lot of continuity again, which has been the theme of Forge since day one.
Yeah, it's always very difficult to pick against Forge, just based on the consistency that this team has shown over the years. They have never once been easy to beat. They've very rarely ever taken a game off or had a day where you like that was a bad game for them. That's very, very rare from this Forge team. So to have the same kinds of key players, Kyle Becker, Tristan Borges, Alexander Shinyote-Janssen, all over the pitch, these players that have played at such a high level in the CPL, they've been, all of them have definitely been through at least phases where they were the best at their position in the league. Some of them there's arguments that they still are. This is a team with a ton of talent that have played together for so long. They're just so in sync with their tactics that Bobby Smirniotis has been laying down since day one. They're always going to be an incredibly difficult team to beat. And they've made some of those additions. They're deeper this year, I think. Ashton Morgan comes in, Kwame Awuwa goes out. Obviously, Kwame was one of their best players last year, had a phenomenal season at left back. Ashton Morgan comes in, a very different player with a very different resume, obviously very well known and beloved in the Canadian soccer community. We've seen the level he's played at for the national team, for Toronto FC, for elsewhere in MLS or USL. We know what he brings. We know how important he'll be to that locker room. So certainly, I think that they've found their guy to replace Kwame at left back. And then, as you alluded to, Hajabrapor and Taryn Campbell coming in from Pacific. They got beaten by a team, so they poached 2 of their best players. Is pretty funny. But and again, that first game is going to be a lot of fun, because I'm sure Pacific aren't super happy about that. But they're, again, 2 very good players, and there's a lot of depth in that Forge midfield this year, especially with Hajabrapor coming in and Abubakar Sissoko, who again we saw play very well with Halifax at the Island Games, and it's really nice to see him come back into the league. So again, Forge, we know what Forge are, and I wouldn't expect them to be much different this year.
Yeah, they have since departed one of my favorites. I'm sad about that. I'm still trying to get over the loss of Lamani Cisse. Not going to lie, be very, very disappointed not to see him play. But they still have Ashton Janssen, another one of my favorites. We've got favorites on all these clubs, but as you alluded to, a lot of depth there. Maybe Janssen may have to play a lot of centre back right now. We have to make people aware that arguably the finest defender in Canadian Premier League, Daniel Crewson, starts the season injured, of course. Badly injured his knee last year in that big game against York in the semi-final and has not come back. So we'll find out how long that's going to be, but it's going to be a few weeks at least. But you alluded to in midfield, that might might be one of the reasons why you can get Becker, Hajabapur, and Sissoko in if Janssen is very capable to play in central defense, where they still have a lot of depth as well with Matusla, Dom Samuel, and other people there. Also, Noah Jensen is very high on the list of Bobby Smirniotis as well. He brought over and knows a player really well. Obviously played in the NCAA last year. Kwasi Poku comes over as well. Another player from TFC who's obviously getting some international recognition as well. As I said earlier, I sat down with a lot of these coaches recently, and Bobby Smirniotis is a fascinating character. Please check out my interview with him, 20 and 10, from building the perfect burger to sipping whatever he wants to drink in Athens. There's some great stories in that chat. But I won't share those with you right now. What I will share with you is, what do you actually think when you've got a great team, and how do you improve on it? Here was Bobby's answer.
I usually hit on this every season. It's finding the easier goals sometimes. I think we do a great job, and we score a lot of goals, and we scored a lot of goals in 2021 and been very successful. But I think there's moments in the game where we create a lot, we get into a lot of good positions, and maybe sometimes it's about just pushing the ball in the net. And sometimes that's a personnel type of thing. You need a Pipo Inzaghi on the field who it'll hit him on the back of the head or something, and it goes in. So I think that's what it is. I think we just need to be a little bit more lethal in that final third, and especially in and around the penalty area.
As usual, I think that's a very astute point. 16 of 28 games last year, 1 goal or less, despite being a real dominant team. When they go off, they go off. I remember being at both these games last year, particularly. I've got them in my notes. 4-0 against Ottawa, where they blasted them for 3 quick goals in the second half at home last year. 4-0 against Halifax, where they blasted them for 3 goals early in the first half. And in both those games, they could have won by 8 or 9. That's how good they were in those games. They were marvelous. And that's when you go, okay. And I'm sure Bobby Smirniotis is thinking, Terran Campbell now, you've got Emery Welshman. I know they've lost Babuli, but Emery Welshman only played last year. He only started 5 games. He came over mid-season. Rubens Pussias didn't play a full season last year. So finally, plus with goals in other areas, they probably think they've got their strikers now to counter that issue that he brought up there, Charlie.
Yeah, I think so. And that finishing it was something that Bobby talked about all throughout last year. But yeah, Rubens Pussias, I think, is a big one for me. The way that he came into the squad, I think at like the end of August only, and then almost immediately seemed to be banging in the goals. I think if he'd played the full season for Forge, he might have been in the Golden Boot race, because he scored I think he scored in both of those big games that you mentioned there.
Yeah.
So again, these are these strikers that Forge have brought in that they're hoping can just maybe find those easy goals, tap them in. They've also got players on the wings that can certainly score goals. David Chouanier keeps scoring in massive games. The dude scored at the Azteca a month and a half ago, which is no small feat. Tristan Borges is a former Golden Boot winner in the CPL, and he personally, as well as I think we're going to hear in a little bit, he wants to get back up to that level that he's shown in the past. Even Chris Nanko, if he's a little bit healthier. Omar Brownie is in the squad as well. I'm not sure when we're going to be able to see him, but he's another one with that kind of talent. So there's a lot of attacking firepower in this team. You can't necessarily put it all on the pitch at the same time, but I think Bobby will rotate the squad a bit and find out who's in form and who's able to start finding more and more of those goals for them this year.
Yeah, so deep, right? Wow, how do you get them all on the pitch together? Sometimes if you're chasing a goal, Bobby actually finds a way to do it. Some famous moments last year in CONCACAF games where he had Mo Babuli playing almost as a 6 and just throwing on as many goal scorers as he can.
They've had like 6 strikers on the pitch.
Yeah, 6 strikers on the pitch. So they also have arguably the best player in the Canadian Premier League in Kyle Becker, who is still back in their leader, and just a phenomenal player who runs games at this level. If you're new to it, go watch Kyle Becker play in midfield. He just runs the game. We could talk about particular individuals, many of them, but the next player we're going to focus on, I think, is important because he could be the one who takes this team to another level. Charlie alluded to him, the best player in 2019, got a dream move to Europe, came back on loan, and has admitted it wasn't quite the same last year for a while. Eventually was put in his favored number 10 position and started to flourish. Charlie recently sat down with that man, and his name is Tristan Borges.
Where are you guys right now? What is the mentality?
There's not really much to complain, especially going into this year. We're back to normal a little bit, or a lot more than recently.
Yeah.
But it's exciting times. I know there's a lot of motivation within the squad. There always is every single year, but just knowing how the year ended last year, I think it's a little bit more extra motivation going into this year.
Your first game is in Victoria against Pacific on April 10th on this pitch last year in December, not even that long ago. You know, you had your championship taken away by Pacific. How hungry are you guys to get that back and head into this season?
For me, the way I look at it is, you know, in a situation like this, you see it in all over sports. These questions are always asked after something happens. You know, you go into the next year and everybody's always motivated. But you know, I've said it in multiple interviews, multiple times. You know, first year, second year, or any of the year, wherever I play, it's all about action more than words, right? So obviously, there's a lot of motivation within the squad. Just again, knowing what happened and how it ended, and you know, it was a very good year for us as a club. There was a lot of things we accomplished, and that was one thing that was you know, in the beginning of the season we looked at. It was on our book that we wanted to accomplish, but we didn't, right? So obviously it's motivation every single day.
It was a tough year. You guys played, what was it, 40 games in like 4 or 5 months or something? How do you remember that year?
It's tough to forget, to be honest. Like I said, there was a lot of positives that come out of that, but it's a little crazy to be playing a game every 3 days, 4 days. But what's even crazier than that is the importance of the games. You know, just playing Canada Championship games against Montreal, and just, you know, going back into league and trying to get to the first place spot, and then you're going to CONCACAF, then you got, you know, important games. It's difficult.
I don't know how maybe you feel you yourself had or did in that season. Obviously there were really good moments. There were some goals and some really great games, but maybe I'm sure you'd say as well it wasn't the same kind of dominance as your first year here. I know that, you know, fitness is tough, but how do you look back on that year personally?
For me individually, I think I could have done a little bit more. I wouldn't say it was my best season, but it's a learning period, right? I've been through already a lot of different scenarios, and it's just all about learning and, you know, recovering from it and doing better next time.
You know, 4 years now. How special is it, just what has been built here at Forge, and just the kind of the culture and the mentality that kind of comes from the top, comes from Bobby and trickles through the players?
Honestly, it's difficult to really explain unless you're in the environment. And I know I say that a lot, and a lot of the times that people ask how it is, but it's just, if you really look at the stuff as a club we've accomplished and what we've been through under the circumstances, it's remarkable. Honestly, you know, to play in stadiums like Azteca, to play a club like Montreal, bring them to PKs, and just things like that. It's maybe in moments, when you're in the moment, you don't really realize it, but maybe a couple years down, when you see how big the league is going, you start to see, okay, this is what this team was doing at this time. Like, it's special.
So now going into 2022 with Forge, obviously we've spoken about what's in place, but there's some new players come in, and there's a lot of new faces in the group, including the one that stole the championship from you.
I don't want to talk about that, man.
That game, Ali Hajavarpour was in here like 10 minutes ago. I think Tristan Henry made him apologize to the camera.
Yeah, man.
How, you know, do new players like that kind of come into the squad and get integrated with this group? Because you guys seem like you've been able to get players in even mid-season.
I think it's just us having that mentality and us having that culture here of just winning. I think us having the right culture, the right mentality is what makes it a little bit easier, that having that player, if he comes in having the same mentality, it's easy to fit in with our group.
What are you guys, or maybe you specifically, what are you most looking forward to about this season, or even about that first game in Pacific?
For me, to be honest, what I'm actually really looking forward to this year is just being back to a normal season again. Just being able to have a proper week or have a proper planning to go into a game, just for myself individually as well, taking care of my body, and just being able to have a normal season again. I think that's something, obviously, you know, you realize after, not to take for granted. Every year it's always going to be exciting for a team like Forge, but I think having that first year back to normality and being able to, you know, have proper preparation for games and everything, I think it's really, really exciting for this year.
You guys have 3 trophies, technically 2 trophies, but one of them you could win twice, kind of on the table for you guys this year. What are the goals to win all 3?
Of course. That's our goal, but like I said before, it's all about the work.
Those 3 trophies include 2 Canadian championships. They get to play Toronto FC in their home stadium on June 4th for the 2020 title. And then, of course, like all Canadian teams now, have a shot in 2022. Fascinating interview with Tristan. You got a lot out of him there. And I know he sometimes doesn't always show that. So every credit to you. A great character. love them or despise them, and there are a lot of people who do both in the CPL when it comes to Forge. What you cannot deny is that season, that's right, 2021 Forge will be one of the greatest seasons you will ever see in Canadian soccer professional history. It will never be repeated. I'm telling you, 40 games in 162 days. They went to El Salvador, they went to Panama, they went to Costa Rica, got through all of those continental legs. They went to Honduras. They got booked the spot in the CONCACAF Champions League final. They got all the way to their own Canadian final. They lost very narrowly in a goal from a set piece. They took CF Montreal, the eventual winners who made it to the CONCACAF Champions League, to penalties over 11 rounds and only lost because their goalkeeper missed one. It was utterly a remarkable year. And as you can hear from Tristan Borges as he looks back, he's never going to forget it. But I think they're thankful, Charlie, that this year there's a good chance they may not even play that many games in far longer period in 2022.
Yeah, I think that is something that they're excited for. To accomplish what they did last year, especially the weeks that they had where they would, again, fly to Panama and then fly up and play Ottawa 2 days later and then fly back down somewhere or elsewhere across the country. It was remarkable for them to, I think, arrive home from Honduras, I think 2 days before they played the domestic league final.
Right.
It's certainly not, I wouldn't call it the ideal situation for them. So this year, with things a little bit more spread out, it'll, as we've said for every other team, it'll be easier for them to move their priorities around, focus on each individual game a little bit more. They don't have to necessarily rest players for another game coming up. They can put more of their focus on the league. I know that, they finished first in the table last year, even with all of that.
Yep.
But, that I'm sure that they would say that there's always room for improvement, games that they wanted to win that they maybe didn't. So yeah, this is going to be a big year for Forge because, again, for them to accomplish what they did last year and walk away from it with nothing to show for it, nothing physical, no trophies for that, I think it hurt them a little bit because, the 2 prior years they had come away with the CPL championship and they had that trophy to show for what they'd accomplished last year. They accomplished more. I think it's not even arguable that they did.
Yep.
But they don't have a trophy. They don't have, that feather in your cap that they've desperately wanted. So I think that Forge is desperately going to want to win at least one of those Voyagers Cups that they're eligible for this year. And they absolutely desperately want to get that CPL championship back because they certainly did not enjoy having Pacific come to their stadium and lift that trophy in front of their fans.
They did not. I was very fortunate and blessed to be on the pitch interviewing those Pacific players who were celebrating, and I saw the look in the eyes of many Forge players. Yeah. And I think that look and that memory has been entrenched in their mind, and it will be very, very at the forefront on Sunday. That's right. A rematch of that game kicks off Pacific season and Forge's season on Vancouver Island, live on OneSoccer, 7:00 Eastern is the 4th and final game of the opening weekend. Check that game out. The return of Ali Hodrabrapor and Terran Campbell to a ferocious stadium, getting ready to welcome in a champion. It doesn't get much better than that. We are 4 teams down, 4 teams to go. Our next one, we shift our focus to Winnipeg and Valley.
Up here, we have a special relationship with the night sky. It holds a transformational power, elevating memorable moments played under the lights into unforgettable ones. To honor this gift, the center of our own solar system, our ball will wear the colors of the Northern Lights for the first time. A fitting tribute to the natural wonders on full display by Canadian players. Unforgettable moments take flight.
I got chills watching that. I don't know about you. Yeah. Chills. I love that ball. Every credit to Kenny and Carolina and Roy and everyone else, the team behind that. Wonderful. And Derby Star put out a great ball inspired by the fantastic Northern Lights, which I one day will see in person. I really want to do that. It's on the bucket list, mate. Yeah,
for one day.
Yeah, I really got to do that. I've been to Norway, but never been to actually see that. So maybe I'll get there one day to go see that. That'll be pretty special. Talking of special things are happening in Winnipeg. No doubt about it. Valor FC are back for another season. They have Phil Dos Santos in charge, who was not there for the full campaign last year, came in with 10 games to go as he replaced Rob Gale in their pursuit for the playoffs. And they come in as, I think, a real contender here. They've made some changes and they get some significant players back as well. Duncan says, Valor, always my favorite jerseys. People love the jerseys and they're easy to love and root for. But when you look at this team, Charlie, last season, an unbelievably contrasting year. Yes. Came out of the bubble as flying. And by the way, they were not... People said they had home advantage. I know it was in the stadium. They still lived inside the bubble of the hotel. And many people said they didn't have it. Players actually had family members 2 blocks away and couldn't see them while they were in that bubble.
Arguably more depressing, to be honest.
Even more depressing. I agree. 100%. But what about this for a stat? 18 points in the bubble in the first 8 games of last season. 17 points out of the bubble in 20 games. That's how it flattened pretty quickly. Now, I know they got a lot of injuries, and we have to start with the main injury. That's right, their main man, Andrew Jean-Baptiste, who did his ACL in the 7th game of last season in the 14th minute and was done for the year. They got more injuries throughout the year. Ricci got hurt, Romeo, lots of different, Keogh only started getting back. Dyer was a loss. I've mentioned a lot of significant players there. Yeah. So how is your feeling amongst this team? I think they've still got a real shot at making the playoffs, but it's one of those, I think, teams that it showed me before because we still haven't really got a feeling for what this team's going to be.
Yeah, I think that this is a team that we're going to have to watch because Phil Dos Santos obviously comes in midway through last season as coach to take over. It's hard for a coach to come in midseason and actually kind of establish what he wants to see with the club. And we maybe started to see a little bit of it towards the end of the season. They did start to pick up form and they got themselves back into that playoff race, ended up coming actually quite close. Were it not for, I think they drew 3-3 with Edmonton on the last day of the season to miss out on the playoffs. But this is definitely a team with quality, and they have that ability of reaching those heights that they did in the first, I think it was 6 of their first 7 games in the bubble that they won.
That's right.
And then it's absolutely not a coincidence that 7th game is the one where Andrew Jean-Baptiste goes down. And after that, they're just not the same for really the rest of the whole season.
Their bubble burst, you could say.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I guess so.
It's a horrendous dad joke.
But like, in a sense, Andrew Jean-Baptiste is like their big offseason signing.
Yeah.
Because they spent so long without him. Phil Dos Santos never had a chance to work with him, on the pitch during last season. So for him to come in and be back, be ready to go is massive because of how good he was in those first few games. He was, an MVP caliber defender for that first 7 games of the year. And there's a lot of talent elsewhere on this team. I obviously, Willie Akio is a fascinating player, character off the pitch as well, but he scored one of the best goals I think I've ever seen in the CPL last year with that solo effort and that run from midfield. You've got Moses Dyer as well, who really came to life last year after Dos Santos took over, where he plays a little bit further up the pitch, plays as a striker. And then there are new players coming into this team as well. Alessandro Ricci, I think, was a bit of an underrated player in Halifax last year. He's quite a good creative player who can beat players on the dribble. Matteo Debrienne is a player that a lot of people, especially from the Ottawa region, who was big for Carleton University. So there is some solid stuff in place here at Valor. The unfortunate part, I think, is there's a bit of a hole in midfield with the recent unfortunate news that Raphael Ohin has suffered a pretty serious injury. So I'm not sure quite how long they're going to be without him, but it sounds like it's quite a long time. And he is another kind of heart and soul player on that team who has unbelievable kind of determination and ability to just run through defenders with the ball. So that's certainly going to be a problem and a bit of a hole in that midfield, but elsewhere there is a lot in place with this team.
Yeah, a massive loss, not only for Valor, but for the CPL. Another CPL coach that I spoke to last week privately said that is just an enormous crushing blow for that team. You talk about his presence, Ohin, with the ball. He covers so much ground as well without the ball, and is a real hunter. So that'll be interesting to see what they're going to do to cover that. Diego Gutierrez comes back. That's one player. They've also brought back Sean Rea and Jonathan Siwa, which is huge because they were obviously big parts of their team last season. Siwa, goalkeeper of the year, comes back from CF Montreal to get another chance. And by the way, Siwa was the goalkeeper of the year by a long way. You watch goalkeeper absolutely stone cold rob teams last year and win games for teams. That was this guy. No doubt about it. Moses Dyer, top scorer of last year, 9 goals. 6 of them all came under Phil Dos Santos. You alluded to it. It was an unbelievably attacking team to watch. I don't think even Phil Dos Santos was completely satisfied with some of the games last year. No. In fact, he coached 10 games, 3 wins, 3 draws, 4 losses, 18 goals scored, 17 goals conceded. It was nuts. But that's
fun
also
to watch.
It was fun to watch, but that's also what happens when you play 10 games in 5 weeks. That's all he had was 5 weeks to play 10 games. So it's a little different this year, and that was one of the questions I alluded to when I spoke to Phil Dos Santos in 2010. How different will it be now with week in between games to prepare?
I think every team that wants to play a high-energy type of game will benefit from that. The platform, the foundation we created last year, and having a chance to come back with a lot of similar faces. And when you have more time in between games, you also have more time to work, and that's beneficial for every team. So being able to work on elements that didn't go as well in a game or that you want to grow in your model. So I think those having a proper calendar with games being a bit more spread out, it will benefit the sport. And I think that it's going to be good for the fans too. More quality in the games, higher paced, more energy. So I'm looking forward to that.
Much to look forward to for Phil Dos Santos, including, that's right, another little trip to Vancouver to play his former team, the Whitecaps, in the Canadian Championship, which will be spicy enough as well. That'll be interesting as well. We're not quite sure exactly when Andrew John Baptiste will be back. Hopefully it's now when he's ready to go, but we're going to have to wait and see, obviously, until the lineups come out. They start their season on Sunday in Edmonton, which will be a big game. But undoubtedly, the moment that he is on the pitch, this team turns into a contender. In fact, you could go on and make a big argument that he is the finest defender currently in the Canadian Premier League. It was heartbreaking to see him go down on his own field last season. Did not get a chance to really play in front of his own fans and did not get to travel with this team throughout last year as they went through a playoff. That hurt him a lot, I know. Here is our chat with the man, the mountain, Andrew Jean Baptiste.
Let's just start with what preseason has been like for you guys, how excited you guys are to be back and to get going.
I mean, the energy in the room from the first day has been amazing, very positive, and you can see from the guys that everybody's all eager to get back into it. You know, these off seasons are not exactly the easiest to deal with, but the desire to get back on the pitch from everybody is what's pushing us more and more every day.
I don't think that you've ever actually played for Valor outside of a bubble.
Sorry, I haven't.
So it's got to be exciting to be kind of coming into a more normal season, right?
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's what I've been accustomed to. It's what I've grown into playing all these years, and so yeah, it is something to look forward to. You know, to actually have a full season with this club under my belt.
Yeah, certainly last season started really well for you guys. You know, those big wins, and you personally looked like you're going to have an amazing season, right? But then, as we all know, injury comes, and that's tough.
It's part of the game. It was a big, punch in the face, having to deal with it. And honestly, from when the moment it happened, my mindset was like, is this really what it feels like? Like, I couldn't, wrap my head around it. Like, wow. Thinking back to so many of my friends and former teammates of mine, they all flash in my head. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And that's when I knew, I have a task ahead of me that I'm gonna have to do the exact same thing. And, having people who've done it before and, prevailed is somewhat motivating to me, knowing that I can do the exact same thing, but it's gonna require me to put the work in if I want to achieve those same things.
You kind of stuck around the team, right, after that happened?
Always.
I'm sure that they appreciated it as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was hard in the beginning. For me, my football is like my everything, to be fair. My family knows it's football and family and friends in that order. But my family back home, they're a football family too. My mom's a president, my dad and my brother are also coaches. So we understand as far as what football means to all of us. So with that being said, it made it real hard for the next several games after that injury, to be around the bubble. I went from being the guy that, everybody was looking up to, and the opponents would, look at me in the hotel, and it's like, oh, that's that guy, and then, you went from being that guy to that guy in crutches. And it kind of got at me, it got under my skin a bit. And the next several games after the bubble, it was a bit hard.
Last season, when you were playing, you were, as you said, you were the man. Like, you were probably the best center back in the league for those few games that you were still there. How confident are you that you can, maybe not miss a beat, get back to that level when you're back on the pitch this year?
Oh, when I'm back, I'm back. Mm-hmm. It's as simple as that. It's I'm not gonna miss a beat when I get back on it, because I know the game, I like the game, I love the game. So when I know that I'm back out there, and there's not a thought in my mind about what I sustained the year prior, I'm not gonna miss a beat. It's interesting that you mentioned how many young Canadian players are on this team, because obviously you yourself aren't originally Canadian, but you've come into this group. And you seem to have really bought into kind of the club and what you guys are building in Winnipeg. How important has that been to you? Amazingly important. I'm involved with the Valor Academy as well, and seeing from outside of just the Valor and the CPL, and you start seeing what Manitoba and Winnipeg has to offer as far as other football talent, because people we have this joke in the locker room quite a bit. It's like, oh, who's the best player to come out of Manitoba? Right. Devin Scott, obviously, but of course. Just for the guy side, we take digs at it. It's like, Raph, maybe Feds, Federico's brother Thomas, he's in Vancouver Academy right now, and we say Bustos and sometimes, and it's because Bustos not here anymore. It kind of fuels everybody.
He's a rival now.
Exactly, it sort of fuels everybody up. Like, I want to be the best. It's like, all right, good, be the best, lad. Now, how are we gonna get there? The need to succeed has to be as badly as you want to breathe.
Right.
And you have to be desperate for it. You have to be anything. You're gasping for it. You want. That's how badly you have to want to win. Yeah. And I think that's the mentality in this team that has been growing more and more and more, because we're tired of losing. Yeah. We're tired of that. Yeah. We've seen it, we dealt with it, no one likes it, but now we're done with that. Now we know what we need to do, and I think that's the mentality in our room that's going to be different than the years before.
I'm ready to go run a marathon. Where are you?
Yeah, you can tell why he's so important to that team off the pitch, especially.
Yeah. Like, did you guys go crush the dumbbells or something after that together, Charlie, or what? Like, that was an amazing moment. What a human being. Fantastic. Yeah. They're just an inspirational character, no?
Absolutely. And I'm just so happy to see a player like him, of his kind of profile and background, come to Winnipeg and just be so happy to be there and so bought in on that project of the community and the grassroots soccer scene, the local clubs that he's working with. And again, it's so funny that he's an American-born player who represents Haiti internationally, but he is so invested in the Canadian soccer community and the Canadian Premier League, and helping those young players on that team and being a mentor to them. Because he spoke later on in that interview, which again you can see on CanPL.ca, he spoke about his own mentors in the game that he had as a player. I think he mentioned Lloyd Sam and Pamadou Ka and some other players that he played with throughout his time, especially in MLS. And he knows that there are things you learn from a player that or from a teammate that you'll never learn from a coach. It's a very different relationship that you have, and so he embraces that. And I think it's really going to be important for the young players on that team.
Great reminder from Charlie that all these interviews we're playing tonight are just snippets of longer discussions that you can really get to know them. And if you're up for a long run, just go watch Andrew John Baptiste. He'll motivate you to the hill and back. And great to see when he gets on the pitch that he'll be centre-back partnership. Well, obviously Stefan Chamara is very good as well, but Rocco Romeo's never played with him. And Rocco Romeo from Toronto FC, that could be the real stability that this team needs to allow Dyer and Akio and many others to go flourish and win games for this Valor team. Do not sleep on them. They'll be fun to watch as usual. We move into our sixth team now. We carry on across the country and we head into Alberta. And the background is blue for a reason as we talk about FC Edmonton. And this is a team like no other. Obviously, ownership changes are happening and major changes on the pitch. The continuity exists in the dugout. Alan Koch returns again, and it's going to be a very different season for him. He's very aware of that. But the great thing is they are ready. They have a full roster. And I think they've got some decent players looking at this now. Now, some teams in the Canadian Premier League, we should say, have signed players and loaned them to FC Edmonton. And FC Edmonton are able to play those players against that opposition. That's important to note as well, as people continue to get used to the rules in this league. But Azriel Gonzalez is back, now owned by York. Tobias Wojciechowski is back, now owned by York, as is Julian Ulbricht, who will play with Tobias Wojciechowski, the two Germans likely to play up top. And they're also good buddies off the pitch as well. That certainly helps as well. So the continuity is there. They brought in Luke Singh from Toronto FC. Shamit Shom is back, now owned by Forge as well. And a whole host of good young players as well. Cairo Coro, don't sleep on him, from Cape Breton, the draft pick. Gabby Bitar from Carlton Ravens. Many others. Master Kasha, who is from, obviously, the aforementioned Valor as well. So, look, this is going to be a challenge. There's no doubt about that, Charlie. This is going to be a challenge like no other that Alan Koch has ever faced, and this FC Edmonton team as well. But they've got a young team. They've got a team that a lot of the players feel like the last chance saloon here. When you think of players like Felix Enser, obviously Niall Higgins, Mamadi Kamara, players that are getting a last chance, particularly to play at this level. And it'll be exciting to see what Alan Koch can do with this group.
Yeah. I think that this is going to be one of the biggest stories of the season, is just what this FC Edmonton team looks like. As you alluded to, and as Alan Koch himself will say all the time, there are no expectations for this team this year. So, every point, every win that they manage to accrue is progress for this team. And again, credit to Alan Koch for being invested in this project and sticking around, because he came in before last season knowing that he was going to start a rebuild at this club. He basically has had to start again after this season. But he is building something. They're trying to, reignite the Edmonton soccer community, because there is obviously a great passion for the game there, as we've certainly seen in November when the national team was there. And this is going to be a very hungry team on the pitch. Kristian, as you said, a lot of these players having either their last chance at this level, or they're young players, they're getting their first chance. All of these players want to show what they can do. This is going to be a team that, is counted out by most people from day one. They're going to be playing with like a restaurant Tostito style sized chip on their shoulder. Just absolutely massive. So this is going to be a team that will try to be as difficult to play against as possible. So I don't think it's going to be fun for teams to go to Clark Field and play against them, right? And I think that's going to be maybe their number one priority on the pitch this year, is making sure that they're not pushovers, that they are a team that can, be competitive against other teams. And I think looking at the roster, they can be, especially with the starting 11. Maybe they don't have the depth of other teams, but there are very talented players in this team. As I think Azriel Gonzalez and Toby Wojciechowski were phenomenal, especially towards the end of last season. Those two paired with Easton Ongaro, who has obviously moved on to Romania, that was a pretty good attacking trio in a lot of games. I think they beat Pacific in one of those games. So there's going to be talent in this team. And again, Shamit Shom coming back, we know what he's been able to do in his career. He's got kind of a lot of MLS experience with Montreal. He didn't have a great year last year. He's pretty hungry to have a big one this year. So again, there's no real expectations for Edmonton, but I think that they can definitely, maybe prove some people wrong and have a few big moments this year.
If you're watching live or if you're listening later on the podcast, we're open to more suggestions for nicknames for this team. Charlie went with the Tostitos team. I don't know, trademarks, the Doritos boys, whatever it is about the chip on the shoulder. We're open to any kind of chip labels. They could be called the Miracle Men, depending on what happens in 2022, by the way, as well. Wojciechowski, you mentioned, I think is really key. Alan Koch got him really fit and motivated last year, and he was a different player. Not fit and motivated. He may be motivated. He wasn't fit during the bubble, and people knew that, and he admitted that. But for a big man, there is very few players who play with that profile in this league. Soft feet, pushes people around, but can actually play out wide, tracks back really well as well, holds the ball up, good with the back to goal, and can score. So I think he's the kind of player that you can, even if you play with one striker, and it could be Ulbricht, you could play Wojciechowski off the left or off the right. And I think could be a big player for them this year. He's a very different kind of player, Charlie.
And he led the league in assists last year.
Yeah, exactly.
We can't forget.
Yeah,
he is a very good and a very well-rounded player. Yeah. I think he might maybe have to shoulder more of the goal scoring load this year without Easton Ongaro there, obviously. But as you mentioned, he's got very good feet. He's got a good touch, and he's got that ability to cut in or to send across. And he's going to be a fun player to watch. And I think, again, him and Gonzalez were playing opposite wings last year. They were pretty entertaining. They could whip in a phenomenal cross onto Easton Ongaro's head, which isn't that hard to see up in the sky. But
That's true.
there's attacking talent on this team.
There certainly is. Last time I saw them live was their last home game. I was there in Edmonton when they beat Forge in that game. Goal scored by Easton Ongaro, which I think secured the wooden spoon for Ottawa that day. I think that's what it did. Yeah. The man that's been at the forefront of all of this, who hasn't hidden behind any of it and has taken on this challenge with two foot in, not hidden behind a quote, not hidden behind an interview, not anything. He is Alan Koch. I spoke to him recently on my 20 and 10. So much insight in that interview. But one of his best answers was the ambition to teach young players and how different things are now than a year ago. Here is Alan Koch.
It's allowed me to go back to the roots a little bit. Obviously, I've coached at every single level possible. But part of what we have to do here is to develop players. And part of who we are and how we're working with the league, it's playing young players. It's having a certain philosophy. And it's allowed me to really focus on trying to maximize each individual, but also give each player a clear pathway. We're going to play a lot of young players this year. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. That's a positive byproduct of what we've gone through as a club. But it's allowed me to go back and focus on trying to play young players, which sometimes as a professional first team coach, it's not just about playing players. It's about winning games. And obviously, we're going to go fight and compete to try and win as much as we possibly can this year. But a big part of what we're doing is to give players an opportunity, play them and develop them. I'm excited to work with some young guys in our group and see how far we can take them this year. I've enjoyed it before. Obviously, there's been a lot of young kids over the years that I've worked with that have gone on to amazing things. And I'm curious, to be quite frank, to see who's the next one.
Who is the next one? Indeed, fascinating to keep an eye on that. Every credit for Alan to taking on that challenge. Someone who's not quite young, who needs to be a big leader and take over games in central midfield, is probably arguably their most talented player, now belonging to Forge, and that is Shamit Shom, former Montreal Impact / CF Montreal star in Major League Soccer. Charlie recently had a chat with him.
You were here last year. It was kind of a long season for everybody involved, but you're back. So where's the head at right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a different situation than when we started last year, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. We're just going to build from the ground up, and it's a fresh. The beauty is it's a fresh clean of paper, fresh sheet, and I'm just trying to play my part and help the team grow and do as good as we can this coming season.
What was it like for you, the process in kind of deciding to come back? What were the conversations you maybe had with Alan Koch and whoever else?
Yeah, it was difficult for me to see what the club was going through, first of all. I had to just take a step back and kind of think what was best for me, my family, my entire situation. I actually started training with the team a week early just to kind of get a vibe of how the team was looking. And I can honestly say that I'm confident in the team we have, regardless of the situation and whatnot. And if I wasn't confident in it, I wouldn't be here this year.
FC Edmonton is obviously a club that you have a lot of history with. You were here in the old days before the CPL, before you went off to play in Montreal, and you're back here. It's always got to be special, right, to be representing your hometown? Yeah,
and I think that was a big thing for me, was just staying back here, representing FC Edmonton, especially during the tough times. It's something that I was, I'm willing to do, and I think, everything that the club's done for me, it's my time to give back, and so hopefully being here I can be a role model for, the younger kids coming up and just be a good role model for the team.
Last season, I think when you first signed back with this club, it was a really big signing for the club, obviously, because you have been a player that a lot of people around Canadian soccer know. You've got some of that experience in MLS with Montreal, which went pretty well. You came in last year. I don't think it's a secret that it wasn't the way that you wanted the season to go, right? For the club, for yourself, for anything. But maybe what did you learn last year about, the way that the whole year went down, and what can you kind of bring from that into this year?
Yeah, I learned a lot about myself and just, when things don't go your way, what can you do about it? You can either kind of mope about it, complain about it, or you can just keep putting in the work. Just come in, day out. And put in the work. I think last year I was a bit on edge too. I was putting a bit more pressure on myself to be the guy, and when we weren't having success, it hit a bigger toll on me. This year, I'm coming in a lot more relaxed and just enjoying every moment of just playing back home with my friends, in front of my friends and family, and hopefully that'll bring the best version of me out.
You mentioned earlier, you guys want to surprise some people this year, and obviously it's no secret that maybe the expectations aren't super high for this club, but it feels like there's hunger in the team to certainly maybe prove people wrong in this team and as you said, surprise people.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of guys here that feel like they should be playing for bigger contracts at a better level, including myself. And I think with that hunger and that desire, it goes a long way. Soccer's a lot more than just technique and quality and how talented you are. It's about how much you're willing to put in the work, how dirty you're trying to be. Not dirty like that, but like how much you're willing to put in the work and the grit. That's what I mean. Oh my gosh, that's terrible. And I think we've got guys that are willing to do that, and that goes such a long way in soccer. And so, that's what I'm really excited about, is just coming into an environment where everybody's willing to put in the work day in and day out and get better.
As somebody who's been at that next level, who's been in MLS and has seen it, what does it kind of take, do you think, to get there?
I think it just comes, it's just about doing it on a daily basis. Being here last year, I could see some guys in games, they wouldn't be focused, and it goes the same for me. It's about coming in day out and having that same standard and matching that standard every day.
So what are maybe your first impressions so far of this preseason? So what is the vibe, and just what is it, kind of the messaging from the coaching staff at the moment?
Yeah, it's an interesting group. It's a tricky time. I mean, we're only a month out from the season, maybe even less. But everybody's just hungry and ready to work. Even the guys on trial are making it hard for the guys that already have contracts. So definitely a very competitive environment because everybody's trying to prove themselves. And I think the beauty is of starting from the bottom is the starting 11, the starting 18, like those spots are all up for grabs. And so everybody's hungry and pushing for those spots, which is making training very competitive and very intense.
The season, as you mentioned, coming up really quick. You guys start it at home against Valor FC. What are you looking forward to most about this year coming up?
I think just the fact that there's no expectations. Nobody expects us to do well, if I'm being honest. I don't think anybody in the CPL expects that we'll do anything special, but that's the beauty of soccer. A team that starts from the ground up with nothing, they can do everything if they got guys that are together, that are willing to put in the work. And I'll even go out there and say, look at the national team. They might not have the best players, they're not all playing in Europe, but they have that unity, that cohesiveness, that brotherhood, and that's what drives them forward. And if we can replicate, an inch of that with Edmonton, it'll go a long way. And so I think that's what we have to focus on, especially.
Very well said. Start the season with a game against Valor on Sunday at Clark Stadium, followed by another home game the following Friday against York, away to Forge, and then Pacific at home. The most important part for me, connection with fans. Fans have got that team back, and I've met a lot of them out in Edmonton who love that team. Jeff, I see your comment about ownership. I can't answer it. I don't know. But all I'll say is that I know there's a lot of people behind the scenes working on developing that. Jeff Harrop has come in, and many other people are working great people working at that club who care a lot about that fan base, Alan Koch included. I know the connection to fans is really important there. So hope to see many of you out there this year and supporting your team in Edmonton. That's what it's about, grassroots football, and really getting behind your region. We stay in your wonderful province of Alberta, but we switch from blue to red. There it is. We go from Edmonton to Calgary and Cavalry FC. And I don't want to start with anything else. Nothing from me, nothing from Charlie. We're going to start with Tommy Wheeldon Jr. So, Tommy, one thing you learned from last year, what was it?
Play to the effing whistle. You were there.
Was there?
We had about 5 of our players all with their hands up in the air, and we leave a contentious decision to a player outside of our control. We can only control what we can control. So a lot of our trainers is playing to the whistle, and believe me, there's been some dubious calls. That's the big thing to first and foremost affect.
That's how close it can be, folks, in sports. You can get close to winning it, and you can get close to losing it, and it's literally inches why Pacific ended up beating Cavalry and going on to win it. And Cavalry thought they had the team to win it. They had home field advantage. And the ball did not go out. Kunle Dadaluk hit it off Marco Corducci. And the rest is history. And that is a long time, Charlie, to be thinking about the last moment they were on a professional football pitch in the Canadian Premier League. So that is a sour taste to leave in Cavalry's mouth.
Yeah, that's it's a long off season when that's the way that your season ends, especially when you're at home in a semifinal in extra time and you're that close to getting to the final. Yeah, it has to hurt. It has to hurt. But as Tommy kind of said, that's something that they have no choice but to learn from. Yeah. It's, really nobody's fault but their own that sort of went down in that way, because again, you can't stop playing just because you think the ball is out of bounds. The same thing kind of happened to Cavalry in the 2019 final when Tristan Borges scored at home. I think there was a ball, either Kwame Awu or Chris Nenko turned it on the sideline, and Cavalry thought that was out as well, but it ended up in the back of their net. But again, Cavalry are a team that have been very, very good every regular season. They've been right up there at the top with Forge. They've probably been more consistent in the regular season than Pacific over the last 3 years, but they haven't jumped that final hurdle yet. They need that playoff win. They need that championship to really be in the elite where they want to be and certainly can be. So this is a very big kind of prove it season for Cavalry, who have all that talent but need to take that extra step and have something to show for it.
Yeah, look, there's a lot to like about this team, right? Really deep again, a lot of continuity. I just think, and sometimes you get lost in this. You don't think about it when you're in the middle of it. But I think, and I don't want to speak for Tommy, but I think Tommy and these players, I think their motivation would be, we don't want to look back in 4 or 5 years' time and go, we just didn't make it. I think that they've come that close now that, the regular season and then the playoffs are two very different seasons. So knockout football, league football can be very different. I would back this team in the league style to say, yeah, go ahead and they could be the champions again. And by the way, they are champions in my mind. Forge are the regular season champions. That is a title and an honor you earn and you win, trophy or no trophy. That's my opinion. And then they have to show it in the cup games, the playoffs, so to speak. Just because that's where they've fallen short. That's not necessarily all their fault. That's just the way it's been. But they have fallen short. They were second place last year in the league title, in the league race. They got home field advantage and they lost. 2020, first place in the first stage, got to the final stage, lost 2 games, didn't make it into the final. 2019, we know the best team in the Canadian Premier League, get to the final, lose both legs very narrowly 1-0. That's just the story so far. But what we know in sports is you sometimes have to learn to lose and lose again before you know how to win. There's been many of those titles out there, many of those successful teams in sports that have lost and found a way to win after it and learn from it. And what this team has is they've got a lot of survivors. They've got a lot of players back. They've got a lot of continuity. I counted 17 returnees to this group, which is, I think, one of the highest numbers, if not the highest number of all squads in the Canadian Premier League. Yes. There's a reason why many of them are back. And by the way, some of those players, Joe Mason, 9 starts, Ali Musi, 4 starts, Ben Fisk, 13 starts, and Tom Field, 8 starts last year, put in my notes, are back as being real contenders for the best 11 and didn't play a lot of minutes last year. A strong team. You look at the likes of Di Chiara and others, Field, Escalante. There's a lot of players who are really good who are not going to be playing every week in this team as well, Charlie.
Yeah. Oh, there certainly are. It's actually really tough to pick kind of a projected 11 for this team because there are a lot of players, especially in midfield and in the kind of the wide attacking areas on his team that, most of these positions have 2, 3, even 4 players that could go in there, right? I mean, even Elijah Atakubi, who I know that we're going to hear from quite soon, sort of a new signing, but because he missed last season with his Achilles injury, but the 2 years before that, he was one of their best midfielders, one of the most accurate passers in the entire CPL in both of those seasons. So him coming back in and being a locker room presence is big, but there's so many parts of this team. I think especially in midfield, there's a lot of depth in this squad. So again, they have a lot of unfinished business in the league that they're quite hungry for. And, honestly, I think a little bit frustrated that they haven't achieved that level yet. But again, just some of the new players as well. Really great. Meyer Bevan coming in from New Zealand. Jean Aniel Assi on loan from Montreal. I know that Tommy has been very impressed with him in training the past few weeks. So again, one of the deeper teams in the league who have absolute designs on that championship.
Yeah, Charlie Trafford comes over from Wrexham just to bring more depth into that midfield as well. Victor Lattori was one of the brightest spots in the midfield last season, an outstanding young player that will be getting a big move, no doubt in my mind about that as well. But in midfield, when he does move, they're going to be fine because you mentioned it, Elijah Atakubi, Tori's Achilles, just a crushing injury last year in April, didn't get to play the entire season. I remember talking to him during the season last year. and just a shining light and a ray of positivity. Obviously, if you're not sure and you don't know, of course, you know the name, Adekubi. Elijah is Sam Adekubi's brother, who, of course, was a hero in the Canadian men's national team World Cup qualifying as well. Sam is a great character. So are their parents, just a wonderful family. And so is Elijah. Here's his sit down with Charlie.
Let's just start with where your head is at right now, because obviously you missed last season, but you're coming back for your 4th year with this club.
Man, I'm excited. Like, it's been a while. I haven't played in a minute, but last year was a test. But you work through things, you get through it. But now I've got an opportunity to play football again, and after a year, almost 2 years without playing, like, man, you don't know how it feels. Like, I'm just happy to be back playing.
I think a lot of soccer players missed it during the pandemic.
Yeah,
right? And then
facts.
Obviously for you,
immediately. Yo, life tests you sometimes. What can you do?
Yeah, but 4th year at Cavalry. Just tell me a bit about how you've kind of found your home here and you're really settled into this club.
I mean, yeah, I think from day one I felt comfortable. Tommy, Leon, who we have right now, Nash at the time. I work with them with the PDL. They also coached me during my youth. So from early days, like, I was comfortable within the club. And I think the good thing is, like, we've always chased success here. So we're a team that wants to keep winning, keep growing. And I'm ambitious, like, I'm driven, and I want to keep growing and getting better. So that's kind of been a match. Like, and now going into year 4, I think this is one of our best teams. Like, the guys are good. Like, we got a good energy around the group. So, man, I'm telling you, I'm excited. Plus, I'm back. It's like, the energy is different when you're back playing. Yeah. Last year, you're more of like a spectator, but when you're with the group, when you're working with them, you're going to war with them, man, it's different, Yeah.
What was it like kind of being on the sidelines that year? I know that obviously you're an important guy in this club. You're a big locker room guy as well.
Man, that was one of the biggest struggles I went through, because ultimately I love what I do. I love being around the team. I love being around the guys. I love working, going to war, training, playing every day with them. And to have to sit out that whole season, especially knowing, like, I tore my Achilles March 30th, so knowing that, like, it was going to be a stretch for me to even come back at all. Mentally, that was one of the hardest things that I've been through. You just find different ways to deal with it, you know what I mean? Like, I poured myself into my rehab. I kept grinding. I made music. I did a bunch of different things, and I found other areas to channel my drive and my passion, and I think that was an important one for me, because at the end of the day, like, we're footballers, we love football, and nothing comes close to being able to go train and play games. Like, bro, you can't beat that, you know what I mean?
You mentioned you made music last year. That was really interesting to a lot of us. I think we kind of didn't expect it. Like, how long has that been something that you've been interested in? Like, where did that come from?
So people that don't know my family is hella musical. Like, my brother plays piano, my sisters sing. Like, my parents are pastors. We grew up in the church, so church choir, my parents both sing. So basically, like, we've been doing football our whole lives, but if you come to my family around Christmas, like, we're vibing to music. Like, my brother's playing the piano, we're like the vibes are there, the music's there. So the passion for music has been there since day one. I hadn't really had an opportunity to really embrace it because you're locked in with footy, you know, you don't really see time outside of that. So last year was the first chance I had to be able to be like, hey, all I'm doing is rehabbing and going to the gym this year. Like, I need something that I can pour my passion into, and I love music. And then I make music, made a song for the team, people liked it, and it's a vibe, you know what I mean?
How motivated are you guys heading into this year, especially with how close you were last year?
The hunger's there, that's all I can say. Like, we know how close we've been in every year. I mean, consistency throughout the 3 years, we're up there with the best. Like, I've seen a table where it was like regular season points and all that, we're top. But right now, like, our last hurdle is playoffs, and that's something we're working towards. Like, every day, everyone that's here that's signed knows that our only goal is to win. All I know is, like, every day we're here working, that's the only thing that we care about. We want to win. We want that championship. We want everything that comes with being champions, and we're not going to stop until we get there. So,
April 9th, what are you most excited for?
And just, like, playing an official game. Like, playing an official game to me, like, to actually be able to, like, play a game with fans there, do the whole experience from a game day again, like, that to me is just going to be, like, an unbelievable feeling, because I feel like I've had to wait so long for it.
It's got to be an exciting time to be involved in soccer in Canada. Right? I know you're closer to it than a lot of people, because your brother is obviously a big part of the national team. Just what is that like, just being, you know, part of the momentum that's building behind this sport right now?
Honestly, it's a little surreal, because, like, seeing from day one when, like, we first came to Canada and started playing footy, like, in photos in the gyms and stuff, to where it is now, seeing what my brother's been able to do in his career and with the national team, and, like, being able to talk to him and kind of, like, experience those things with him. Some days I'm still in disbelief, like, this is actually happening. Everybody that's been on a pitch in Canada soccer, that's contributed to the game or done anything, we've all played our part to help grow this game. And now to see where the national team is taking it, and to be able to witness firsthand, like, some of the experiences my brother's been telling me about, it's just amazing, bro. What can you say?
Exactly.
Like, what can you say?
Exactly.
We can say it's amazing. It's a good enough word for me. That's what a good enough word for Elijah is a good enough word.
And if you haven't seen the full video, which I encourage you to go check out, just after that, Elijah kind of talks me through what it was like for him watching Sam score that goal in Hamilton.
Special.
It's really fun. It's cool to see just how excited he was to see his brother do that, and how he said he didn't really know that his brother could hit a ball like that. I don't think any of us did.
No, that's great. No, it's a great interview. Go check it out. As I said, CanPL.ca has got all of it and all over our YouTube channel as well. Final word on Cavalry. I think they're probably going to want to be a bit more efficient in front of goal. Yes. I mean, Mason obviously playing more games is important. I think last year, I've got the stats back it up, 17 of 28 games in the regular season, 1 goal or less. I think of games last year that I was doing broadcasting games. I think of Edmonton away. Edmonton at home in a game where they dominated them. They drew 1-1. They went to Vala. Ledgewood scored a free kick goal and they battered them. And then they let them get one chance back and they drew the game 1-1. And too often they gave teams a chance to get back and didn't finish them off when they needed to. And I think that's an area they need to get better in and be a bit more efficient. And of course, a healthy Joe Mason for the majority of the season, he's going to be one of the season's favorites to be the Golden Boot winner, Charlie.
Yeah, I think so. Just given his quality and what he's done in his career, especially in England. Efficiency is a good word for Cavalry. They had so much possession most games last year. They would be able to get into the attacking third, absolutely no problem. But then when it came to, that final ball, it just wasn't always there. Even when Mason was on the pitch, he was sometimes a little bit isolated. They couldn't actually get the ball to him as much as they wanted to. So just being able to find those key passes to, again, score those goals and make the best use of that possession, because they're so good at kind of playing out of the back and building up. That's kind of the base and the building block of this team. Now they need to find kind of that killer instinct in the attacking third that is going to put them over the edge this year.
A reminder, they start on Saturday in the nation's capital and you can go watch them. Pay what you want game, go in, and then obviously proceeds go to the mission statement, the missions in Ukraine. In fact, they're away in an Ontario. It's an Ontario April for Cavalry. Away in Ottawa, away in Forge, away in York, and then they start at home. Guess who they play at home? Pacific on May 1st. And with that, we move on to the champs. They're next.
Still loose, Morelli! And hit it in! Malcolm Shaw! Joignier, his shot, and finally, their goal! There's Bustos, score! And Mr. Benjamin Fisk. Another game, another goal! With love, champions of the Canadian Premier League, Pacific FC!
That is your week 1 slate, courtesy of our friends at OneSoccer. Great to hear the pipes of the likes of Gareth Wheeler, Adam Jenkins, Alf de Blasis, Matt Cullen, and others. And they'll be your guys again as they call games throughout the season on OneSoccer. The purple is here, and I know many people in the chat have been waiting for this moment. We have finally got to the champs almost 2 hours in, and Finn is in right away with a chat called with Bustos plus Diaz equals domination. This is the champs for a reason right now. And by the way, a fascinating team because they are the champs, but what an offseason this has been. Where do we start here, Charlie? Palmer Ducar's gone.
Yeah.
So James Merriman comes in. It's not too much of a transition. James has been a big coach for this team. Has coached before, actually as a caretaker. Island boy, loves this team in his heart, in his blood. They lose Lucas McNaughton and Caden Chung to TFC. They lose Terran Campbell and Alessandro Jabrapor to Forge. Yet all of this suddenly doesn't feel like a rebuild, doesn't feel like they're going to struggle to make the playoffs, doesn't feel like there's a lot of concern, still feel like a powerhouse, no?
Yeah, I think so. And it's a testament to maybe the underrated depth that they had last season, that it still feels like that, because they lost, the players that they lost were some of their best. Campbell, McNaughton, Chung, probably all arguably in their top 5 players last year, I think, is probably quite fair to say. And Hajabrapor, obviously, as well, very important, scoring a goal in the final for them. But even still, there's a lot of talent that was already there. There's some new players that have come in. The big one, obviously, Amir Didic, coming in at the back to replace Lucas McNaughton at center back. That's going to be really interesting because Didic has also been one of the finest center backs in this league for 3 years at FC Edmonton. So him getting a bit of a different challenge, a bit of a different role at Pacific will be something that's interesting to watch, because we know the talent that he has at, pinging passes pretty much anywhere on the pitch and beating almost anybody in the world in the air. So yeah, there's definitely going to be an adjustment period for this team. They're going to be very different. James Merriman is a very different character and kind of coach to Pamadou Ka, who was just everything. he was massive.
Intense.
and in many ways as the coach, the face of the club, because he was just such a character and such a presence whenever he's on camera or in the room with you or anywhere. But he laid a lot of foundation at that club, and I think a lot of his impact is not going away, and a lot of the things and the mindsets and the culture that he instilled in that group are not going anywhere. And James Merriman has been there the whole way. He understands it all. He's been there from day one of this club before Pa was even there. So nobody understands the group and the organization and the culture better than he does at the moment. So I think that there is definitely going to be a bit of a different look to this team, a bit of a different vibe, but largely the pieces are still there. And the hunger and the drive to, defend that championship is something that they're looking forward to as well, because they're excited to kind of be the team with the target on their backs this year.
You mentioned James Merriman, in many ways, Mr. Pacific. No, go watch my 20 and 10 interview with him. And anybody who hasn't seen the interviews with him this year, you're going to get to know and love this guy. As I said, Ireland boy, and has been dreaming of an opportunity like this, and now gets a shot. We talked earlier in the show about Martin Nash and this being a league for Canadians to prove it on the pitch and off the pitch. Now a chance for James to get his chance as well. And in many of its discussions with him, I asked him what kind of changes, if any, is he going to put and implement on this team in 2022?
We're not going to change everything. We want to keep that energy defensively and off the ball to win the ball back. But we want to add more to our in possession and to on the ball. And that's what we're trying to get across right now. And that's what we're spending a lot of time talking about. So that's what I would like to add. And that's what we'd like to bring into the new season.
I'm sure fascinating for you to also get out Marco Bustos playing a lot more than he did in 2021 will help as well, right?
Yeah, Marco Bustos, Baldissimo, Thomas, TMG. So those are three big pieces that didn't get a lot of time last year.
And that's important, because the players that they've lost can be helped by them. Thomas Meyer-Giguère, 8 games last year, but when he was playing in the playoffs was immense at centre-back. When boy did they need him. McNaughton suspended in the semi, Samaki injured in the final. Baldissimo, 5 games last year, started once. Only one start, and injured for the majority of the year. But when in his game, he's going to be one of the best midfielders in the Canadian Premier League. And Marco Bustos, talking about one of the best, arguably the best player in Canadian Premier League, 17 games last year. And with Bustos on the pitch, 31 points from 17 games. Without Bustos on the pitch, 14 points from 11. Dramatically different. And with those 3 additions, plus some of these new players coming in, Mavila, we mentioned a few of the Baldy, Daniels, lots of players coming in, Habibullah. There's a different look, a little bit freshened look, but still having that, that kind of stalwarts out there that have won this championship for them. And maybe it's Manny Aparicio's team now in midfield to take over as well.
Yeah, I think so. I keep thinking of names that we haven't mentioned yet on this team that are so important, were so important last year. Manny Aparicio, they're arguably man of the match in the final. Mm-hmm. He had a phenomenal day there in midfield, and he's a fantastic player at controlling that midfield, finding those creative passes. Again, Josh Hurd as well on the left, one of the more direct and underrated players in the league, and a player who absolutely has that tenacity in every game. I think he's a fan favorite out on the island as well, a local guy. But yeah, I think the biggest one is obviously Marco Bustos. In my opinion, the best player in the league. Probably my early pick for a potential player of the year. I think he would have been player of the year if he hadn't been injured last year. Because I think, well, did you say Definitely. He played 17 games?
Yes.
Last season? Yeah, 7 goals, 6 assists, I believe, in that time, including just an absolute dominant stretch in the bubble in Winnipeg. his hometown, I might add. One of those games in front of his parents, I think. One of the most incredible players in this league to watch, whether he's cutting in on that magical left foot of his, whether he's creating for players, and one of the most intelligent players in the league as well, with the way that he sees the game and the way that he can, even in interviews and things, articulate the way that he sees the game and why he makes choices on the pitch. So yeah, for these players, to the injured ones from last year, to come into the squad and to have a healthy full season, really there is a lot of potential in a specific team to not miss a beat and to remain right alongside the top teams in this league.
I said earlier, whether you're a fan of Forge and Forge at that level where you can love them or despise them, and Pacific are getting to that point right now, everybody loves Marco Bustos. It doesn't matter. You root for a guy like Marco. He had a difficult time with injuries last year, a player that has just been so explosive, and now a player that is a pure example of a Canadian player that had his opportunity, then lost his opportunity, gets it back, and now is a man on a mission, a grown adult who's matured so much and has talked in depth with me and Charlie about that. He sat down for a fascinating interview with Charlie during preseason. I just really encourage you to watch the whole thing because you get to know a lot about Marco. But for this show in particular, here's a shortened version as Charlie went out the island and spoke to Marco Bustos.
Where is kind of your head at heading into this one?
Yeah, for me, it's kind of where we left off last year, champions. It's exciting to come in, start preseason. And the start of preseason is the start of defending a championship. We're coming in with nothing less than trying to win everything again. And just on an individual level, for me, it's most importantly staying healthy. It was a bit tough for me at the end of the year last year. I'm confident in saying I'm back better than I was before. So,
just how motivated are you personally for this season?
Yeah, man, you just gave me a bit of chills there. Like I said, I want to pick up where I left off. Pacific, from the owners to all the staff, the players. I'm treated very well here, and that allows me just to be me, and that's for me has allowed me to push to be the best player in the league. And if I don't believe it, who's going to believe it for me, right?
I know it's probably tough, but are you able to kind of share a little bit of just how tough that was and how much you were kind of motivated to come back for this season after that?
Yeah, it was very tough, but at the end of the day, that stuff happens in sports, at every level. And for me, the beginning was quite tough because I was looking forward to this game against my old team, the Whitecaps, and obviously the guys went out there and did a great job. We won the game, which was most important. But that was a tough one to sit out. I just remember sitting here in the stands with my brother, who actually flew out to watch the game. Yeah, as soon as the game started, I just was sitting there in tears. But at the end of the day, I had a lot of support from everyone, and just worked hard. Worked hard in silence of, coming in every day, try to get better, 1% better every day, and I eventually got there. I stepped in. I think my first appearance back was against Valor, full stadium here, and when I started warming up, the fans started clapping me, which was a cool feeling. And then when I went on, I had quite a big standing ovation, which was cool. And just I didn't know I meant that much to everyone here, which is a nice feeling. Obviously not playing the final was tough, even though being on the bench, and obviously the guys winning, that was a great feeling. Just running onto that field, hugging everyone, and it just being a tough year. Then just enjoyed the rest of the night. That was it, and I've put that past me. I feel 100% now, and just trying to get better every day and look forward to the season.
Your first hurdle is here on April 10th, where Forge are coming.
Yeah.
So it's not only is it a final rematch, but you've got Taryn Campbell and Ali Hajabapur coming back here.
Yeah.
What's that going to be like for you guys?
Yeah, obviously with it being the first game of the season, it's going to be quite a big occasion, regardless who we play. And then with those guys coming back, obviously they were part of our squad that won a championship. You know, they wanted to go on to other opportunity, try something new within the league. It's a footballer's choice. You know, that's them, and at the end of the day, it is what it is. For me, it's us against Forge. You know, I think that's probably now the biggest rivalry in the league, and winning's a habit. So if we carry on what we did last year as champions, you know, and make that a habit, you know, hopefully there's not many that can stop us.
How much are you guys embracing that kind of idea going into the season of being the team that other teams want to beat?
It's pretty cool when all the other players in the league want to play for you or play with Pacific. There's a ton of players that want to come here, but it's impossible to have a roster of 200 players. So no, it's a cool feeling. You know, at the end of the day, a game of football is a game of football. You know, we come here and we don't want to make it easy for teams to come here. You know, when they come to play us, we want them to feel that presence. When they walk through the tunnel, we want to walk out already 1-0 up. You know, that's the mentality we have to have. But yeah, you know, having a target on our back is nice. In some eyes, we're the hunted right now. You know, people are coming after us. You know, what we've done as a club, the way we play, you know, an attacking style of brand of football, keeping possession, you know, teams are coming after us. So it shows that we've been doing something good.
They certainly have. Something real good, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Special interview with Marco there.
And just quick shout out to Josh Hurd and Callum Irving hanging out in the background behind Marco there. They waited a long time for their turn in the media chair. So because Marco obviously talks a lot for a long time, so you know they're very understanding.
They're very understanding. You know, you got to talk to the man, Marco Bustos, at that point. I can't thank him enough for being open and honest. And no, we wish him and Pacific FC nothing but the best for the season. We thank everybody for joining us. We're going to wrap it up here. You know, we've been on 2 hours and nearly 12 minutes. It's been a fantastic CPL preview show. If you like this stuff, please get in touch. We want to continue to do this with you. Have videos, live shows, interact with you, talk Canadian soccer, not just Canadian Premier League, but all sorts of Canadian soccer. I just want to offer my thoughts. I am so excited for the season. This is my favorite part. We work with this wonderful league, and you know, we've had this great winter with the Canadian men's national team, and the women's team are going out west and having a special weekend this weekend as well, and they're getting their just desserts and everything they deserve. But with these games coming, and the stories that come with these Canadian Premier League teams, I'm just absolutely thrilled and delighted. This is the most exciting part of the season for me. So we'll see how it goes. And Charlie's giggling away with all the stupid comments that are coming on the side. I should actually just say goodbye now because you're about to lose it. I know what it's like in this industry. Charlie's about to lose it with Benedict Rose and everybody else's comments on the side here. This has gone very CPL after dark right now. So maybe.
Oh, Jeff
trying to cut us out already before Charlie gets another word in. But Charlie can't wait for the opening weekend of the season. We have to say that as well. All games live on OneSoccer, starting Thursday night, York Lions Stadium, York United against Halifax Wanderers, and then Saturday in nation's capital, Atletico Ottawa against Cavalry. Edmonton at Clark Stadium on Sunday against Valor at 4 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock local. And then talking about local, 4 o'clock local, 7 o'clock Eastern Sunday, the rematch from Starlight Stadium, and it doesn't get much better than Pacific versus Forge. Here we go, Charlie. Blow the whistle. The games are starting, my man.
I cannot wait because, you know, you go through the offseason, you make predictions, you talk about teams, you see the players that come in, and you do, as we've done for the last 2 hours and 13 minutes, we talk about this is what we think we might see from this team. This is what we're excited for. Now they actually have to play, and that's my favorite thing to talk about when there's actually games going on. You know, this team beat this team on this weekend.
Yeah.
There's nothing better than having consistent Canadian professional club football in a domestic league. And it's still, even in our 4th year of it, we cannot understate how special it is and how lucky we are that we have this at the moment.
Yeah, certainly can't. And the fact that it's starting in April and we waited all the way till July last year, and here we go in April. Fans in the stands, the Canadian Premier League starting up. We've got 8 teams in. Vancouver coming in 2023, more expansion as well. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. If you've been with us from the start, thank you for being with us for 2 hours and 15 minutes. longer than a match. So we appreciate you sticking around with us. If you've missed some of it, this will be available again, of course, to watch as usual on our YouTube channel. And you can download it later as well if audio is your preference and you're somewhere driving right now, stuck in traffic, and you want to listen to us preview the season. We thank you for spending any time with us and for your love of Canadian soccer. Enjoy the games, everyone. God bless. Stay safe. Much love to you and your families, and we'll be back soon. Thanks to Jeff, Nick, and everyone behind the scenes here at the Canadian Premier League Newsroom team, and we'll see you at the games this weekend.